We really want to give a shout out to Jim Bates. He had a recent loss, and really thinking about you, Jim. We know it's not easy going through these times. Pets are family, and we definitely feel for you. So this one's for Cornbread.
Good morning and welcome everybody to episode 69 of the Plastic Posse. It is a beautiful day. TJ is actually at AMPS Nationals right now, walking around, hopefully taking some great pictures for the rest of us. And Doug has another commitment that he couldn't make it with us today. Really miss you guys. We hope you're here. But we do have a special guest. Well, special is a big word. We have a guest, but that's a good friend of the posse, a great model builder. Erik Brubaker is here today. How you doing, Erik?
I'm doing well. How are you, Grant?
I'm doing great. It's great to see you, and it's really nice of you to join us today. And the rest of the posse is here. Going to start off with JB in sunny Colorado. How you doing today?
I am absolutely fantastic. It has been a wonderful couple of weeks. Been really busy, but I'm certainly looking forward to this episode.
Scott in sunny Utah.
Well, it's not so sunny, but I'm doing pretty good. How are things out where you're at, Grant?
Oh, it's beautiful. We had more rain yesterday. We really needed it, but saves us from the drought. And in merry old England with their new king today, we have Sir Jensen. How you doing?
I'm on top of the world. Yeah, I'm great. I'm grand. I'm wonderful. I certainly can't complain. It's a very typical English day here, wet and windy and cold, perfectly fitting for a coronation.
Before we get started with all this, I'd like to reach out to everybody and see what they're working on and what they have been working on. We're going to start with our guest star, Erik. What have you been working on?
Well, I've been working on the AK FJ43 with the SPG9, doing my own kind of modifications to it. I just finished up the camo yesterday, last night actually. It's rolling right along. I'm happy with the camo. I gave it a blue fender to make it look like it's like a field replacement, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we've been following your build. It looks really good. I like the blue fender. That's a cool touch, and your camo looks pretty awesome too.
Hey, quick question, Erik. Where did you get the rocket pod?
I got it from ResKit.
Okay, that looks great. That's a conversion I've seen the pictures, but I haven't seen anybody do that conversion with the vehicle yet. It looks really cool, really good.
I was gonna say the advantage to you can just buy the rocket pod, and it actually just fits where the SPG9 would mount in the back, so you don't have to do any special modifications.
Oh, that's great. Cool. JB, what are you up to?
Well, I am working on the AKFJs. Unfortunately, I had some work keep me away from the bench the last couple of weeks, but I've really been able to hunker down on the weekends, at least, especially last night, and make some solid progress. I think the one thing I'm so impressed with this kit is, building it was, I'll be honest, it was okay, this is okay. But really the kit, and more importantly, I think the subject shines when you start getting into the painting and weathering. It's such a versatile vehicle used honestly everywhere all over the world in every major conflict. By the way, if you're listening, go to Toyotas at War on Instagram. Great profile. Highly recommended. You'll see every modification ever done to a Hilux FJ. A lot of inspiration there. And I've just been really having fun with this. It's an experiment in weathering, chipping, different types of worn effects, patina. Overall, I really, really love it. I've kind of gone down a rabbit hole in terms of finishing. I thought it was going to be a slammer build. But then as I progressed through the weathering stages, I was like, whoa, I really enjoy getting the depth of finish. I'm starting to see in some panels. I'm like, okay, let's keep going. So it's been all FJ, hoping to knock out the build this weekend. And then I'll turn my attention to a base. For a base, I'm thinking like a really beat up asphalt. I want a vending machine on its side with a couple tires around it, almost like a checkpoint. And then Grant, major shout out to you. You were so kind to send over the African Rebel set from, Paracel Miniatures. Freaking gorgeous. So it comes with 3 figures and a hyena. I definitely want to use the guy in the passenger seat sitting there with a pistol and his aviators. And then I think I might put the hyena in the driver's seat. I think it just looks super cool. And do a little scene. So I at least want to get the vehicle done this weekend. And then a goal for the scene would be by the IPMS Nationals. And I was thinking about it today, actually. I'm going to go on Thingiverse or Cult and see if they actually have a Toyota emblem. And I want to 3D print that as the nameplate and kind of patina it in like a beat up chrome finish and put that on the wood base as well as kind of like the nameplate for the little scene. So bottom line is I'm having a lot of fun with it. If you don't have this kit, I would highly recommend it purely from the subject. It's so versatile, as we've seen, and we'll talk about. Everybody's done something different, including Erik, who's joined in the fray. So it's really, really cool. You know, as we mentioned before, there's some minor tweaks in the construction, but overall, an absolutely fantastic subject.
Yeah, you're doing a great job on it. You're actually painting the zebra pattern on, aren't you?
Yes, I did that last night. So one of the things in the kit, they do give you zebra pattern seat covers. And I was like, okay, I'll try them. I'll be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of using them. If I was to use them, I would leave the back of the seat off and the butt pad off separately and apply the decals separately. If you're going to use them, they're a little big as well. So it took a little work. I was like, man, I'm not feeling this. So what I did is I ended up masking off the upper seat pad portions, painting them flat white from Tamiya's lacquer line, which dries instantaneously. And then I just grabbed some Vallejo black and a sharp tip brush, and I tried my best to recreate the zebra pattern from the decal on the seat. And I will flat coat them with VMS, and that should lock everything down for weathering. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of shocked at how decent they came out. I was really expecting something to be like, I don't know about this, but the first one surprised me, and I'm super happy. It took about, I feel like 45 minutes to paint one seat, but well worth it. Yeah. I'm going to do that on the other one today, and hopefully I can get through a lot of the painting of the stowage, because really that's the bulk of it left. I have a dust coat and then some earth effects here and there, and I really got to push the stowage in the back, getting them painted. And I've been listening to and watching Martin's videos, super helpful for this subject. And yeah, I'm FJ'd. So
yeah, it looks great. It looks great. It really does. Jensen, what's up with you?
Bit of a chaotic 10 days. Not bad, all good really. It's been just busy. A lot of mental energy has been required. I think in the last episode I finished the FJ. Really want to get a base for it. I did find all my foam for construction. I had no idea where it went, but I've managed to find all that now. So I am going to crack on with a base for the FJ, because kind of similar to what JB wants to do. I want to do like an asphalt road, but I'm not going to steal that idea, because that would be not good. So it's going to be a reference picture. AK have it on their website. It's like a T-junction, but it's on a bit of a hill. There's a slope in the back where you can see bits of concrete rubble, and it looks like either some sort of aerial or telegraph pole sort of thing. So I want to try and create something like that, give it a bit more height. That will be quite a nice vignette I want to do. It should be fairly simplistic as well, so that'd be nice. Also, in the background, I still have the 1918 Japanese service Austin armored car going on. Not really touched that. It's a mini art kit. There's a lot to do on it. Don't get me wrong. It's beautiful. So I'm still absolutely 100% committed to getting that done for Nats, which is, well, I'm flying in like 84 days. So it's like, whoa, that's going really quick.
Yeah.
And the M18 Hellcat, which again, I was looking through last night. I was just trying to find a lot of reference pictures, because I'm trying to, I don't like guessing when I'm trying to super detail stuff. I don't want to just kind of put wires and cables places because they look like they should be there. So I want things to be right. I want it to look good, especially if it's going to be scrutinized by like Jackson and Zach. So if they're going to look at it, I know they're going to call me out if things are wrong. And apart from that, I've actually been given I've been given two projects to do. They're actually identical. They are the Toyota GT1 car.
Ooh.
I'm going to do them in exact same. I know, cars, me.
I know.
Shiny
wow,
things.
That's great though. That's cool.
But it's a really nice car. Love the car. Yeah. I'm not a car guy, but I'm doing it for a friend. And what I said is, what I'll do is I'll do both of the builds at the same time. One's good. It's for Le Mans. So it's one, I think. I don't know. One's going to be pristine pre-race, and one's going to be post-race, like after driving for 24 hours. It's got a blown-out wheel. There's panels that have been replaced. It's going to look really cool. And I'll do an article on it. I'll put it in the magazine, and then they want the magazine to go with the builds when he gets it. And a whole fun little project there for me. But yeah, there's a lot going on in the background, but not an actual lot going on on the bench at this second.
Well, that's great. That car build sounds great. I mean, I remember looking at the GT1, seeing pictures after Le Mans, and they had actually used duct tape to put around the headlights because they're falling out. So that's great.
They got hammered.
Yeah. So that's cool. That's great. And Scott, what have you been up to?
So like everybody else, it sounds like, I finished my FJ, and then I posted a few pictures of that on just a piece of foam with some, just a layer of texture on it. And I done a bunch of work, putting down some AK mud and some stones and some sand and a few things like that, and then took some balsa and formed in the base, made a kind of a wooden base around that, and that's all sanded up and drying and waiting. JB, the detail painting on those zebra seat covers, that looks so much better than a decal. I mean,
it does.
Don't sell yourself short. That's a great touch. And I love the idea for the Toyota logo. That's fantastic. It's too big, but I've actually got a 4Runner, and I have an extra hood ornament logo that I would send you to put on it if it was a little smaller. But that's a great idea. Looking forward to that. So, and then I'll paint the base and everything on it black, and then paint the scenery back in, kind of like Martin does on his videos, and put a couple little tufts of grass and things like that on it. So that'll be great. And then I also primed a figure. If anybody went to the NWSM show and went to Grant and my 3D printing thing, I had this Diablo figure that I had printed. It's a single print. It's the Diablo 2, great big huge demon form of Diablo, big dinosaur monster demon looking thing. But anyway, I got that all primed. I'm going to paint that for a friend of mine. And then next up is getting back on my Panzer One. I'm excited to get back to that project and get going on that. So that's what I've been doing.
Oh, that's great. That's great, Scott. Yeah, you did the Lebanese version, right?
Yeah, I did a Lebanese government vehicle. Seems like there were a whole bunch of groups in Lebanon that all had them. Mine's a government vehicle, but I really like how all these different FJs, the paint is so different. I love Jensen's hand painted camo. It's just so cool, and I love the color palette he used. And then JB went with the yellow, and the rust looks just amazing on that yellow background. Looks really, really good. And Erik, I like the colors you're using. Grant, your Israeli one with the signs on the base, that looks so good. TJ's looks fantastic. It's just awesome to see like a rainbow of the same vehicle with different options and colors. It's been kind of a part of this that I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I like you said, it's been enjoyable. Everybody's got a different concept. Everybody has a different idea, and it's turned out real well. JB said it right. It's a first kit, and there's a few parts here and there that need some tender love and care, but they're pointed out real well by other modelers and videos, and you know what to do when it comes to painting that vehicle. Makes it so much better. There's something about the square shape, either with the top on or top off, something about that shape that just, to me, it just absorbs the paint so well, lack of a better words, and it makes the detailing look so good on it. Jensen's hand painted stripes, that's immaculate on it. Those things are great. They are really, really good. And that's a skill I don't have, is hand painting camouflage like that. That's fantastic work. TJ's, Somali version is really nice too, with the darker color with the sand overtone. And like you said about everybody else's, it's just a fun kit to build. And I recommend you go out and get it and try different versions of it. There's more coming out. I saw a new FJ. There's a different or a newer model of the Israeli version they have coming out. Plus they have the Land Rover, right, Scott?
Yeah. They've got Unimogs that are already on the street. I think it's an upgraded ICM tooling. They've added some really nice resin and 3D printed accessories to that. I'm pretty interested in that. They've got some really neat paint schemes there. And then, they just dropped a Rover. I believe it's like a tow truck version.
Yeah. And there's several versions. I think it's like the FJ. They did several. There's a tow truck version. Yeah, that's really cool.
Well, they've also, on these FJs, at least, AK's been very generous with stowage, toolboxes. Mine has a high lift jack in it. Fuel cans. I've got Uzis and a Galil. radios, I'm all kinds of stuff. So yeah, they've been really generous with the accessories, which makes it, really intriguing and appealing that way as well. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
I was just going to mention the Land Rover, the new one. The first test shot was released at the show in Madrid today.
Oh,
so
wow.
it's currently May 6th. They said they were going to debut it there at a show in Madrid. I haven't seen pictures of it yet. I got to go creep on the AK Facebook page and take a look. They also released, I think it's called All-in-One Box. It's very similar to the Solution Box, to be honest, but they're going after architectural side. So they have a brick one and they have kind of a stucco facade. Very similar to the Solution Box, except I think it includes the kit as well.
Oh, wow.
And it's very similar to the Solution Box in that sense, where you're going to get a book, you're going to get all the material, and then you actually get the kit. This is more geared towards, and this is something we talked about, is we need a fall group build around the shadow boxes where you pick a facade. We can all get a frame from like Hobby Lobby or your local art store. And I think that would be really fun where, hey, your materials are foam, balsa wood, styrene rod, like all basic scratch building supplies. And we do that. And it's more of, dare I say, the artistic side of the hobby where we're all going to create a facade, frame it. And I think it's pretty cool. So it's really inspiring. And there's a lot of people in the AK world that have been doing it. I know Rick Lawler did one, and they might even be doing a book or something on it, I feel, because I've seen a few pop up in here and there. But I think that would be a really fun exercise for all of us to, pick a facade. Hell, even Spencer Pollard did his local pub. I thought that was awesome. Non-traditional modeling, and I think it'd be really cool. So something to consider after Nats, I feel.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It's amazing. Another thing about these FJ builds, and I can't wait to see what Jensen comes up with, but when you add a base, especially to a singular vehicle like this, it just takes it to a whole nother level. Putting mine on the base and just I'm certainly not a master of this, but even just a small little, balsa sided piece of foam and a little bit of rudimentary scenery just adds such another dimension to your builds. And I think it's completely worth it. That Panzer One, the one I'm going to do was at a tanker school that they train their tankers on these Panzer Ones. I'm looking for like cobblestones that I can put together in a courtyard where I can put the vehicle, and the planning of the base and the presentation ends up being a big part of the project. The tank isn't the focus. It's bigger than that, and I really enjoy that part more and more all the time.
Yeah, you guys are both right. It's a great idea, JB. I would love to do that. You're starting to see a lot more. Like you said, Spencer did a great one. He's done a couple of them now. There's some fantastic people in Europe that are doing some beautiful scenery work like that. And like you said, it's basically foam, balsa wood, sheet styrene, and a little bit of vegetation, and just paint. And it's just showing a little bit of different side of the art of the hobby. Myself, I have, like I said before, I did finish my FJ. I did the Israeli version, put it on a little scene, found some signs from Mini Art, a couple, some decals, some modern graffiti decals that came from Green Stuff World, threw one of those on the back of one of the signs. I also have been working on some figures. I've been really motivated by Warhammer Fest 2023 that just happened last week. So this is the 6th. So it happened the beginning of the end of last month or beginning of this month in Manchester. Fantastic numbers. Golden Demon Awards were handed out. Well-deserving awards. Fantastic paint jobs. Had a gaming section. They had this. It's Warhammer Fest. It's fantastic. First day, 10,000 people showed up. Had 1,500 Golden Demon Awards or Golden Demon contest entries.
Holy cow!
Yeah, so they were very tough. They had very, very big. That was Saturday. They had 10,000 people. Sunday they said they had 9,000 people, and then on Monday they were at 85. I think 8,500 people. They rented a large civic center like area in Manchester this time instead of having it at the usual place, which was, from all I can understand, that people enjoyed it, had a great time. There's a lot of videos out there of people at the show. If you have some time, check it out. But I've been really motivated by that. So I'm working on some Warhammer stuff, finished up a couple of figures last day or so. Work's getting in the way a little bit, but that's the way it is. But that's what I've been up to.
The Triple P is sponsored by Tankcraft, makers of highly realistic aftermarket 3D printed tank tracks in 1/35th scale. Tankcraft Pro Tracks, as real as it gets. These are not just copies of previously produced model kit parts. These designs are based on real 1-to-1 scale tank track links that Tankcraft has measured and photographed. These designs are then downsized to 1/35th scale, printed and test fitted on all the major 1/35th scale armor kits. Having used these tracks, we can honestly say that these are high quality, super detailed, easy to assemble, with fine layer lines that are practically invisible to the naked eye. Cleanup is minimal and usually not even needed. So go on over to tankcraft.com right now, that's TANKRAFT.com, and get yourself a set of Pro Tracks. While you're there, check out their other cool scale modeling stuff. Your bench will thank you. As a reminder, Posse fans can take 15% off their first order using the code POSSE15 at checkout. That's POSSE 15.
That's awesome, Grant. I'm glad you've been busy. One thing I wanted to talk about was our good friend Stephen Reed, who is at AMPS Nationals right now with TJ and Jackson and Zach and a lot of our buddies. He had recommended some 3D resin printed details from Demon Barber Designs over in Sweden. And so Christopher, the owner, reached out to me and we started kind of talking. He sent me some of his product and man, this stuff is amazing, you guys. He's got gun sights, gun barrels, pretty much all armor stuff, intake grates for T-34s, exhaust pipes, a lot of KV T-34 stuff, JS2, IS2 kind of stuff, lots of details, a lot of Russian and German World War II subjects, but it's 3D printed. The prints are super clean, some of the cleanest prints I've ever seen, and the design quality is pretty amazing. He also does really good packaging. I think to the US, you can get free shipping if you do a $75 order. But highly recommended. I mean, just Christopher, he does amazing work. It's really, really nice. The armored gun sights for the KV, the gun barrels, just a lot of really great stuff. So check out, if you're an armor builder, check out Demon Barber Designs out of Sweden and look at what they got. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
All right, so let's move into our first discussion and topic. We had a question from Chris Doppler. Kind of interesting. It's not kind of, it's very interesting. And I couldn't get it out of my head for a couple of days. So he writes, I think it's interesting topic to discuss would be how you guys balance your personal life and modeling life. How do you balance spouse, children, house projects, and your bench time? I often find it difficult, quite difficult myself. Thanks, Chris. Well, I'll start off with this, Chris. I find it difficult myself. I really do. I work, 50 plus hours a week, sometimes, a lot of the times. So my bench time is kind of really sporadic. I usually try and get up a half hour early before I need to get up and spend about a half hour working on the bench in the morning. It's quiet, so I can get a lot of stuff done in a half hour. And then before I go to bed, I spend about 45 minutes just relaxing and working on some stuff. I might not even be working. I might just be sitting at my bench, just kind of mellowing out a little bit sometimes, but I do get some stuff done. I don't have kids. Me and my wife we don't have them. So I don't have that issue, but I do have 2 dogs that seem to drive me crazy and want to sit in my lap every time I'm at my desk. So that I count as my children. But handling that and handling the work schedules is how I do it. I mean, I've learned that, there's an old saying out there, if you spend 18 minutes a day, every day in 365 days, you'll be 90% better at one subject than everybody else in the world. So you spend 18 minutes a day working on one project or working on one subject, or in this case, modeling. That means at the end of a year, you will spend more time modeling than 90% of the people do. Because most people don't model every day. They wait till the weekends. They wait till days off. So I try and portion out my time throughout the day. And the weekends are hard for me also. So I kind of have to keep on that schedule. That's how I do it. So Jensen, how do you do it?
My modeling time / personal time / everything else is really sporadic. I can either just spend hours and hours and hours each day at the bench, having a whale of a time, being really productive, or I cannot be at the bench for like 4 months.
Yeah.
It's such a weird mix. And I've said this in the past that usually my bench time very heavily coincides with what mood I'm in and my current state of affairs. So yeah, it's not so much really a forced balance. Like I don't try and dictate any sort of balance or time or schedule to me being at the bench. I am here kind of just when I'm here. It's not something I can force. If I try and tell myself I'm going to be at the bench today for 3 hours, I know for a fact I am not going to be at that bench for 3 hours. Or if I am, I'm not going to be doing 3 hours of work. It really is just right now I'm feeling like doing some modeling. So we'll do some modeling and I'll stop when I'm not feeling like modeling. Yeah, there's no sort of kind of balance or schedule. It's just, it really is kind of, it happens when it happens sort of thing. Pretty much like everything in my life. I'm not a planner. I just kind of see what I'm feeling on the day and go with that. Because if I don't, and if I try and live that weird scheduled life, which I keep getting told that I should, for some reason, I resist. Self-destructive tendencies, shall we say. But yeah, in short, it kind of happens when it happens and it doesn't when it doesn't.
Yeah, it's my way is not the right way. Let's just put it that way. Everybody has their own way.
Mm-hmm.
You nailed it on the head there. It's like sometimes, there's been times where I couldn't even get to the bench for a month or two. And I just, I didn't want to sit down and do it. It's just sometimes you do have to take that break, and but when that motivation hits you, sometimes when it hits me, I like, watch out, I'll be there 6 hours and just go nuts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's enjoyable. And then you sit at the end of 6 hours, you're like, that wasn't 6 hours. You're like, that was 15 minutes or so. You think it was so fast. So yeah. How about you, Eric?
Well, it's kind of a juggle because I have kids. And since coming back to the hobby a couple of years ago, it's really hit hard. I found with having ADHD, a lot of hobbies that I've gone hard in the paint on. And modeling is one of those ones where it doesn't involve other people. It's just me. So like I can do this solitary, but I'll work all day, sometimes 10 hours a day, sometimes 12 hours a day, because the work I do is seasonal. Again, it's sporadic. I find myself coming back home. Like if I come home early from work, when I work an 8-hour day, I'll come home and try and put some time in at the bench before the family gets home. Like you guys said, I'll be at the bench and I'll hit that flow state and nobody, like the world just goes by and I can hear the cars outside going by. Meanwhile, I've built this little widget or, crates or painted a figure or put a figure together or built something. And I look up and I'm like, my wife's yelling at me for dinner time. And it has become a problem, but it's one of those things where my wife and I have sat down and addressed it to be like, okay, what days do you think you want to, work? Do you want to be at the bench? Because I need your help with the kids these days. And, they have this certain thing going on. So we need to, plan it out. And that helps me and her because we both know what is expected.
Right.
Well, there's no, what do you call it? Unexpected events that happen like, oh, hey, the guys are modeling. I'm going to go down to the bench. And then, to the detriment of my wife and my family. The narc likes to come down here and sit next to me and build. He's working on a Panzer III right now. And to me, a Panzer III. He's got a bunch of models he's been working on. But, and my daughter actually has a little fine molds female soldier from the 80s that she's been working on that I've been helping her with. And my wife actually painted during the birthday bash. She built a Sherman. And I've been trying, we've been slowly working on the painting of all the stowage and all that. But as far as the balance goes, I mean, like you guys both said, it's a juggling act. There's no right way. There's definitely a wrong way, I think. But it would be something that would have to be done per your own circumstance.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And the way you bring up the point about how your wife and you sat down and talked about when is a good time and when is not a good time is key for the married people out there. I think is very important. I do that with my wife too. Bringing them into the fold is really, it's a very important part of this.
It sounds cliche, but like happy wife, happy life. Like that's the truth.
Yep, I definitely agree. How about you, Scott?
Well, like everybody, real life is always distracting. I mean, I guess the best advice I have is if you want to spend more time at your bench, maybe don't start a podcast. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I joke. It is a lot of work, but it on the other hand, it really boosts your mojo. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I never want for mojo. I've always have something that's inspiring me and wanting to get down there. I think I need the time at my bench. I need some time because when I work with my hands, I process stress and life and anxiety and job. And so I need that time. And so for me, I think we talked a little bit in the last episode about honoring your future self and cleaning up your bench a little bit, trying to remove distractions. That helps me. I spend less time watching TV and, playing video games and things like that so that I can spend more time at the bench and, be more productive. I don't have small kids, so I've moved past that. I'm a little older and everything, but I have dogs as well and, different things that distract me. So I think it's just making sure, I guess for me, just making sure that it's time you put in the time, you go down and you spend time on the bench. And if it's like Jensen said, if it's 10 minutes and that's what you feel like, then you do 10 minutes. And if you go down there at 7:30 and all of a sudden you look up at the clock and it's 2 a.m, then that's what it is. But for me, I need it. And so as far as balance goes, I think it helps me keep the rest of my life in balance because I need to process that stress and the things that life throws at me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like you said, for me, it's a stress relief. I mean, we all have our ways. I'm 54 years old. I'm not going to go out and run anymore. I'm sorry. I'm not going to do that. So I go to the bench and work my stress out there. So I definitely agree with that. JB, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's echoing a lot of what's been said already. It's always a balance between personal, professional, and the hobby. When I think of professional, it's the job. And unfortunately, my job fortunately, I really enjoy my job. So I'm not really stressed about that, but it does keep me away from the bench, unfortunately. And like this week, I found myself getting to the bench for the first time last night, and I had plans to hopefully get a couple minutes in throughout the week. And that just was impossible because it's kind of a combination of what everybody said, where, you have your obligations to put food on the table, and then you have obligations in your home as well. Whether it's pets, a partner, good friends, there's always competing priorities. And, lately modeling is just the last on the priority list. Yeah, it's just all about that balance and prioritization and understanding. There's respect in a lot of cases too. It's respecting that partner, that wife, that husband, or your friends for that matter. Sometimes they should be number one priority. It's just delicate. I guess what I'm saying is, and you'll know it when you feel it. I think not when you see it, but when you feel it. If you start to feel distant, if someone starts to feel distant from you, that's probably a sign that maybe the hobby is taking a little bit more than it should. And it might mean you don't make progress as fast as you want on a project, but that's okay because it is a hobby. And like all of us has said, there's someone else there or something there that takes the precedent. So I think bottom line is, we all have good plans. Like I write down a list every day for, work, but also there are personal things on it. And then on the weekend, I'll write down a list, typically on Friday night or Saturday morning, around things I want to accomplish. And, I'll just read out my list right now. Vacuum is at the top of the list. Laundry is at the top of the list. Polish off work. And then I get into modeling where it's LVT, write the article, IPMS seminar. So I think some of these little things like writing down a list, trying to think through what can be done is the way I handle it. So long answer short, priorities, sometimes modeling's at the bottom of the list. And that's okay. But, social media, being able to talk to the folks online here and, other friends that we have, group chats like that. I might not be at the bench, but I'm exposed to the hobby, and that's just as important.
Oh, definitely agree, JB. I'm a list maker too myself. I have a list. I start Monday. I follow it through the week. I update it every day, at the end of the day for the next day. The weekend list is the same thing. I don't know why I do that. I've done that pretty much my whole life. I think I learned it from my father, but it does help me. But you're right. There's 99.9% of the time modeling is nowhere near the top of that list. So, I have to function that way. So I am going to jump on Jensen here a second. I want to talk about the highlights of what we've been looking at on the Plastic Posse website. So I'm going to start off with Jensen. What do you think stood out to you this last week or so on the website?
For me, I absolutely love Scale Model Doc. Our good friend Jonathan. He's finished his Jagdpanzer 38 and he's finished the vignette for it. And it is just absolutely stunning. It's been so fun watching that come together, how detailed he's gone with it, like the whole construction, the painting, the weathering of it. And then the base he's done with all the, it's like a fountain sort of water receptacle thing made of concrete, and it's got all these leaves and debris in it. It's just a really nice scene. It's well composed. It's just good modeling, just all around, just a very good piece. Yeah, I love it. It's been so nice to see it come together, and it's nice to see him getting the bench time, because the guy's non-stop. He's always busy. So to get this sort of project off the bench, super impressed with it. It's really nice.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's the Tamiya kit too, with the Edward photo etch kit involved in the kit, and comes with the kit. So yeah, he did a great job. And like you said, watching that kit come along it's been great. All right, Scott, what about yourself?
So I'm going to go with our friend Daniel Brubaker. He's done an Object 252, and oh man, yeah. It's got faded. It's got all of the great things about being an armor modeler. I mean, he's got deflected shot, and those are weathered beautifully. He's got rust, he's got mud, he's got dust, he's got faded winter whitewash. It's just, everything is just beautiful. It's like Adam's work, Adam Wilder, where every bolt, every weld seam, every panel on that vehicle tells a different story. And so yeah, Daniel Brubaker, want to shout him out on that Object 252U, I believe is the vehicle. So nice job, Daniel. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, Daniel, I'm sure we all agree that thing is beautiful. The weathering and the painting detail on that alone is just immaculate. Just very, 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 very good. JB, how about yourself?
Yeah, I picked Pete Kokla's ISU 152. I think I'm biased to armor, and I'm always loving some green. I got to give a lot of credit to Pete. He's a person I really look up to in terms of painting green. I think he's always really good, whether it's an allied subject as a Sherman, Russian, even those odd brown colors on like the Valentine. He just is really good at, and I give him a lot of credit there. And I look forward to being weathered, because he even shared like mix a gray and a dark brown for a wash. It's a desaturated dust for green colors. And I got to give a lot of kudos to Pete Kokla, someone that I've always admired in that field for green. And yeah, I love what his ISU 152s come together. And I also love his tracks. He's got the wheels glued to it and the whole run done where he can pull it off in one unit. I think that's a simple, great, effective method to really blast through a build, and looking forward to seeing what he finishes, because Pete's a good guy, great modeler.
Yeah, he is. It's great. Eric, what about you?
I would echo all the things that you guys have said about all the subjects that you guys have chosen. In my quick little cursory search of things, I would say I like Martin Drayton's King Tiger with the disc camo. He never ceases to amaze in his speed and ability to build outside of his bench.
Amen.
The stuff he's able to knock out, the dioramas, like everything. But that King Tiger with the discs, I saw some pictures where he got a kit from someone, and they sent him a bunch of different sized discs that he was able to like stick all over the outside of the Tiger and then paint it. And it looked like a lot of fun, but a real pain. But I think he pulled it off. It looks really good.
Yeah, it definitely does. And I think if Martin could ever work at his bench, he would probably do a lot more. But that's the man. Yeah. Martin is the king of hotel builds. He really is. It is. I don't know how he does that. And it's amazing. His work he's growing so fast and so good.
Well, we're talking about Martin. If anybody out there has a Bandai M61, it's their 135th scale fantasy tank with 2 barrels. Martin needs one. If you have one and you're willing to part with it, contact us at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com.
And Martin will take 15% of the money, so don't worry about it. Myself, I am going to say, and I'm probably going to screw up his last name, but his name is Scott Pashisnik. He is actually building or sculpting a Daffy Duck. He had a picture of Daffy Duck. He's using wire, aluminum foil to give it girth, and he is actually sculpting it, and it's looking so good. Last I saw of it was last night. He didn't have the face done yet, but he had the arms, the legs, and he has that Daffy Duck pose and it's just something unique, something different. And he's doing such a great job on it. And I can't wait to see where he goes with it. So, great job, Scott. Sorry about messing the last name up, but really, really, really do like what you're doing there. Looks really good. All right. I'm going to pass it over to JB to talk about some upcoming events.
Thanks, Grant. I really appreciate it. So upcoming events, actually current events as well. We are recording on May the 6th, and today is a double whammy in the state of Pennsylvania. Both MFCA and the AMPS International show is going on. They're both within about an hour of each other on the east side of the state. A lot of photographs being posted online, especially from AMPS. Haven't seen so much from MFCA, but I did see this morning that some of Shep Payne dioramas, Lady Be Good, and the elephant diorama that he did is on display at MFCA. So those are really historically significant pieces in the world of scale modeling, and you could see them at that show. I know some folks, Jim D. Regatas, Barry Beidinger, they probably had a hand in that. They probably know the collector. I know Jim was really close to Shep, and yeah, it looks like an awesome event. And same with AMPS. Some of the numbers that are coming out of there are, a couple hundred models on the table already, tons of nice looking armor. We have our good friend TJ there with Jackson, Grizz, Nuke Man Mike, Frank. Oh my gosh, the list goes on and on. Steve Reed, Zaloga, Neil Stokes, a lot of familiar names. I'm super jealous, but yeah, two great shows going on. And then as we look forward into June and in past August, we have the San Diego Model Expo Saturday, June the 3rd. At the San Diego Air and Space Museum. That looks friggin' awesome. We have the Nats in San Marcos, August 2nd through the 5th. And then we go into the fall timeframe, which has OrangeCon in Buena Park, California, October 1st. We have PAXCon, basically AKA Geek Fest. And that is at the Hollywood Volunteer Fire Department in Hollywood, Maryland on October the 7th. Really wish I could make it, but that butts up to the next big show, which is Scale Model Challenge in Eindhoven, October 14th and 15th. The posse will be there in force, and we cannot wait to attend. My accommodations are booked, and I cannot wait. And then lastly, we have MMSI in Chicago at the Schlumberg, October 20th and 21st. I think Grant and Scott are going there. And then I just see Telford was added November 11th through 12th. I don't know if we're going to make it this year because of SMC, but that is certainly a show that we know and love and really want to support. So those are some of the shows that we have. If you know of more, please reach out to us. We are happy to promote it, and we're hopeful that we'll see you there. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jensen, who's going to take over for the group builds.
The Triple P Maquet Group Build is sponsored by Bases by Bill. Bases by Bill specialize in making beautiful crafted wooden custom display solutions for your scale models, built by modelers for modelers. These premium quality display cases and innovative base designs are available for just about any size of model. These custom-sized display bases range from 4 to 30 inches, providing the perfect foundation for dioramas or vignettes. As a reminder, if you don't see what you need, ask. Chances are they can customize the perfect solution for you. Check out Bases by Bill and see the new custom display products for busts and figures. Use the code POSSE, P-O-S-S-E, at checkout to apply a 15% listener discount to your order. Bases by Bill for all your model display needs.
Thank you, sir. So, the Mac group build, or the Marquet group build, is still doing really well. There's still plenty of work going on the page, and it's good to see more models reaching those finishing lines ready for Nats in 3 months. So, just taking a few out of the group build. Matthew Johnston's Lunar Diver. He's been working on the oil paint rendering on this. I absolutely love. Every time I see this model, I love it. He's been saying the oil paint rendering is taking a bit longer than he wanted, but my God, the results are worth it. I love the contrast he's got with this model. It's just stunning. So I'm really looking forward to seeing this in person. It is really good work. Bill Huffman chipping away on that suit. Like, it's been walking around for 4 years, so it's going to get chipped. That guy, that just his work. It's just outstanding. He's chipping away. It's more chips than the suit I did, and that's saying something. It's chipped to buggery, as we would say over here. Cliff Herring, or Captain Easter Egg, as I call him. That suit is just, every time I look at that suit, there's just something new. It's so cool. He's doing such great work with it. Yeah, again, that's another one I can't wait to see in person, so I can proper scrutinize and see everything he's put in there. So yeah, Cliff Herring, just again, Captain Easter Egg, just beautiful work. Josh Orr, he's working on his Croat. The assembly is very nearly done. Again, this build is just looking stunning. He's added the texture. I think the Croat is just such a funky looking machine with those really weird backwards legs. But yeah, I think it's stunning. Can't wait to see that. Craig Flynn, Lunahund vignette, and he's doing a little vignette with it, and it's really nice composition. He's got like the driver pilot. I think, are they pilots for these suits? That's a good point. Yeah, it's like sitting off the edge of the vignette. Really clever idea. I kind of like it sometimes when like the fourth wall gets broken with vignettes. So yeah, everyone's work is really good. Again, everyone, please keep updating the page and updating us with your builds. We do love to see it, and we do look at every single one because let's face it, Mac's really cool, and it's been really fun to see this explosion in people who don't usually do these subjects come in and tackle them and do them in their own unique ways. So yeah, great work, guys. Just please keep us updated and chipping away at those builds.
And I want to throw a shout out to Lincoln Wright, one of our great motivators for this build and the Make world for all of us. He just sold out of his first book. Congratulations, man. Really good work. Really glad to see that. Your new book's coming out soon. We all can't wait. It's on pre-order. We'll put a link to it. But congratulations on selling out. That's really great. So we have our guest star, Erik Brubaker, here. We're going to get to know him a little bit. So, Erik, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in modeling or back into modeling.
I'll give you both, I guess. It started, I remember one of the first models I built with my dad was the old Testors B2. And I remember building that with him using, we brush painted it black and then that dark gray, hand painted the weapon bays white and the fins because underneath it had like a rotary bomb bay, and that spun and painted the fins red with a brush. Oh, we used Testors tube glue and the tube putty. And I actually had it until recently, and one of the wings had broken off, so I had to bin it. But when I first brought it home, I set it on the floor in my room and I stepped on it, crushed the landing gear, and broke the gear doors off. And I was like, I was so heartbroken. My grandfather was a pilot in World War II. There's a lot of influence there. I built like 2 of the monogram B-17s. One of them had the Shet Payne insert in the box. The second one I built inspired me to like heat up a needle and jam it through the side to look like bullet holes, and like cut parts out of the wing and like add pieces of the sprue, the tag from the sprue inside the wing to look like the freaking spars that weren't lined up with the panels at all. They just looked cool. And then I went to school, and then I had I had kids, and then my son for Christmas a couple years ago got a T-34, the Tamiya T-34-76. Yeah, T-34-76, the CHTZ build. And we built that together, brush painted it, weathered it up. And then we heard about the Northwest Scale Model Show from when Jim Bates was on here. And we're like, oh, we're going to go check it out. So we went down, and I found an old Panzer IV that I'd built, like the first tank model I built in the late 90s, brought it down. And then the rest is history. I fell hard into this hobby. And we also found Adam Wilder on his YouTube series on his KV that he did. I found that YouTube series, and then I searched for him because I'd listened to podcasts and found the Triple P, and then that opened up all the rest of the podcast. But and then I've been down this rabbit hole and met a lot of cool people, and it's been great.
Well, it's really good to have you on. Plus, didn't you just start something up there in the Pacific Northwest?
Yes. So because I live north of Seattle, there's a group that gets together, the Northwest Scale Modelers, that get together at the Museum of Flight on the first Thursday of every month. And because it's free, so you can go to the museum and then you can go to a model meeting too. The hour-long drive to get there was not the greatest. And I was wondering if there was something up north where I lived. Well, I went online to the AMPS page and emailed some people to find out if there was an AMPS chapter or something close, and there wasn't. One thing leads on to another. And I started an AMPS chapter in Seattle, and our first meeting was in April, had a big turnout. There was we had a 12-seat room at the library in Bellevue, and there was people standing. So that's a good problem to have. And our next meeting is coming up. It's on the 20th. It's going to be, we got a bigger venue now at the library because I followed TJ's lead with the library thing. And that's worked out great. Yeah, we're just having people there to, again, pull TJ's motto, build tanks and have fun.
That's great. We're really glad to see you do that. I mean, I'm from that area up there, and there's some gaps in that. There's groups up there. So it's really good to see someone reach out, fill one of those gaps, and make it a better environment for modelers out there.
It's quite a group you have too.
Yeah, there's all kinds of people. Bill Huffman, Jim Bates. Oh, there's so many people there. There's so much talent. And Morgan Gerling, she made a Girlzoon Panzer. She brought a Girlzoon Panzer Stug that she built. It's absolutely fantastic. It's like she hand painted it, like the kanji on the side. She made flags for it, and it's out of this world. I love it. I think it's cool. We're and Joshua Scott, Cobra Claw, he's on there too to get the sci-fi contingent in there. Because, like I said, it's build tanks have fun. Like we have everyone from all walks of life and all genres in there. And that's, not only to expose the people who may not have seen that type of subject, but just to get all the different, some guy who does a lot of sci-fi can maybe offer some kind of technique to someone who traditionally just builds armor that would step up their game. So, a rising tide lifts all boats. That's kind of the whole plan.
That's awesome. I'm glad you, way to go on putting in the work and creating that, and let us know how we can support you. But that's fantastic. It seems like we've had quite a few new AMPS chapters that have started up. I know Vegas, there's a new chapter here in Salt Lake. We started one. TJ, of course, with Novamps. And now Seattle. So that's great. It's great to see, especially out here in the Western US, more chapters and more participation for AMPS. That's great.
All right, Erik. So we know you're a model builder, and we ask this of all of our guests that come on the show. What is your magnus opus build? If you had one build to do, anything, sci-fi, whatever you want to do, and it's just that image that you want to do, what is that big magnus opus build?
There's one that I've been wanting to build as an homage to my grandfather, who was an A-20 pilot in the war, and he flew the BC model, and I really want to build his airplane. And I recently found his hand-drawn nose art that was actually on his plane, and I found the sheet that had like a copy of it, like that he may have given to a crew chief to paint it on. So I've got that. Now, if only HK, fingers crossed, would release a BC model A-20. Once that happens, I've got his personal photo album as well. So I'm going to pick through that, and I'm probably going to do like a dirty OD A-20 sitting in the dirt with maybe some Marston mat down and some barrels and some little scrub trees, and probably a pilot figure to represent my grandfather, and just kind of do an homage to him and the 47th Bomb Group.
Where was he flying out of?
Tunisia, North Africa, basically, Mediterranean theater.
That's great. You don't see very many of those. That's a really cool,
No.
You don't. So that's really cool. So I'm going to open it up to everybody else and see if they have any questions for you, Erik.
Yeah, I've got a question. So you go by colorblind modeling.
Yes.
How has that been a challenge for you, or how have you adapted or worked around that when it comes to scale modeling and painting subjects and doing research? Yeah, how's that affected your day-to-day modeling life?
Well, as far as color goes, like I could care less, honestly, because I know that I'm not going to be able to mix a color properly, but I bounce things off my wife on occasion. I'll use the color right out of the jar or the bottle. The tiger that I recently finished in February, I used 3-color camo scheme with red, brown, olive green, and dark yellow. And in order to be able, so the red, brown, and the green for me, I was like, I can't see the difference in shade. So I lightened up the olive green enough to where I could see the gradient between the two. And then I sprayed it all on and then used a pencil and traced it all out. And then I went to my wife, who's an artist herself. I was like, hey, did I get all this correct? Did I get this lined out properly? And she looked over it and, made sure I got it. And the other thing is like the community that has been created by the podcasts and Triple P, we've got all these group chats, and, I can say, hey, I can't see, I can post it up and someone will, give me a hand. There's no lack of information when it comes to color seeing folks. So that's the big thing, I think, is understanding my own, not disability, disadvantage, if you will, for lack of a better term, shortcoming. Recognizing that I'm able to be able to accept and reach out to other people to get their advice.
So you recently finished your Tiger, kind of what's on your bench now, and what are maybe some big projects aside from the magnum opus that you talked about with Grant that are coming down the line?
Let's see. Well, I've got the FJ. It's in process. That's been really fun because it's one of those things like we mentioned earlier. It's an FJ. It's a weapon of war, and lots of people used them, painted them different. So that's been fun. I've got a TACCOM 35th scale Mammoth that is ready for new weld beads that I think I'm going to take to our AMPS meeting and do the weld beads there. But it's all scribed out, ready to go. That's been a fun build. I've got an M4A3 Sherman from Zvezda that I built in a hotel room, actually, while we were on vacation. That's on the bench. That's the turret's primed. I've got a 16th scale Stug waiting in the wings, watching my son build his Panzer III. I went and bought one myself, so I've got that. There's diorama ideas for an M5 Stuart and for an MATV that I have. It's kind of runs the gamut. I kind of got stuff all over the place. I've got a Gundam Unicorn Verka that's under my bench it's a 1/100 scale one that I've got that is under there that I'm scared to touch because of all the pieces and panels on there to paint. But it's all, I've got a lot of I just build what's cool. I'm not constrained by any particular subject. Oh, and I won a Wildcat at a raffle, and it's a Tamiya F4F4 Wildcat. So that'll be a fun one.
That's a good kit.
That's awesome, Eric. We mentioned you coming to, the Northwest Scale Model Show at this Museum of Flight. I think is probably the pinnacle of events in the Seattle kind of Pacific Northwest. Let's look beyond that. Do you see yourself going to an IPMS National someday?
I do, actually. And the plan is, I put the bug in my wife's ear, and so we can plan it down the road, is to go to Madison. That'll be fun. And I think Commies Fest might be in the future. And
oh yeah,
and dude, funfetti, man, funfetti.
Dude, all you got to do is get to Denver. You're taken care of. If you get to the airport, everything else is taken care of.
I'm sad to see they tore down all the weird art in the museum or in the Denver airport, but
that airport is perpetually under construction. So
yeah,
but we'd love to see a Commies Fest. It's fortunately flights are cheap from Seattle to Denver, and even if it's just a quick trip for yourself, it's well worth it.
Yeah, I'll bring the NARC along with me, and then probably AMPS Nationals, I think.
Yeah, man. Yeah. That's so for, that'll be in South Bend, Indiana next year, which is kind of doable. I've looked into kind of flights and what the transportation is already, but that's awesome to hear. I would love to, I think we all would love to see you in Madison. I think that would be a great family trip too. The city's beautiful, but the show is just unlike any other. So that's awesome. So when you think about that, would you fly or drive?
Probably fly, just to make it more convenient and less time off work.
Yeah, for sure. So you'll have to plan accordingly what projects you're going to bring.
Yeah. My workload this year, it really isn't so much a workload, but I think I can get a few kits done for next year. My goal is to get a few done to display more at the Northwest Scale Models show.
Nice. That's awesome. So, Eric, one of the questions I'll continue we talk about displaying work and showing it. And you've mentioned dioramas a little bit. When you think about your work, like your Tiger, it's great by itself, but have you considered maybe putting it on a simple base?
Yeah, I really want to put that Tiger on a base. The only thing that's holding me back is what to put it on. I mean, I've thought of putting it on a dirt road, kind of like your, is it your Jag Panther?
Yeah.
On the dirt road with the grass and a fence.
Mm-hmm.
But trying to come up with a composition for it is, it's got the shell impacts on it, and the commander looks tired and stressed out. So I want to give it kind of pay homage to the tank for like surviving, and coming up with a name that'll kind of, like return to base or something, or fall from grace, or I don't know. I can't think of something that will convey its
tired
heaviness. Look. Yeah, the tired look, like that, because just a road and all that. I also thought of doing it going over like an old stone bridge and having like a couple of American GIs underneath, like hiding from it because they don't, because of the dreaded Tiger. But
yeah, it's
or a
funny.
hedgerow.
It's funny you mentioned the bridge thing. When I look at your Tiger, I actually get Saving Private Ryan vibes in terms of how it looks. So maybe it's that where it's going over, a really kind of beat up bridge. Maybe there's a busted up Kettenkrad or a motorcycle there, maybe a sandbag checkpoint, but a tight scene for that matter. But like you said, a worn down, beat up, it just has that tired look.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
Well, that's great, Eric. We really appreciate you helping us out today, and we really do had a great time, or having a great time. But now we're going to move on to some feedback. So Scott, what do you got for us?
All right. Thanks, Grant. Well, we've actually got quite a bit of feedback, so let's get right into this. We'll start out with some feedback from the one and only voice of Bob. He wrote in to say, wow, what a great episode. Lots of cool topics. I admit to always having a messy bench and workspace. I'm someone that has to have whatever it is I'm working on right in front of me or around me. I can see where having it all clean and tidy might have some advantages, but I am just not wired that way. I may not be completely wired, period. A messy environment doesn't keep me from modeling it. Rather, it is the fear of screwing something up or doing something wrong that can't be fixed, and painting in capital letters. It tickles my anxiety, which makes me avoid it. He also says, TJ has a point. One day you will complete your best model. Getting older does enter into it with eyesight, back, patience, etc. Unfortunately, he says I peaked around 1979. He kind of wraps up. He says, I have an idea for some Triple P merchandise. In honor of JB, there should be a special tricolor Triple P apparel, a JB special edition, JBSE. Each of the P's needs to have a different camo color. What do you think, JB?
I'm in. I never turned down a good tritonal. So I'm in. We also need to update the store with some Jethro swag.
Yeah.
Mammogram models and Tomoya. Those are popular brands these days. So I got to get that site updated with some of Jethroisms.
Yeah, I probably need a T-shirt that says "Thanks, Santiago." Right? Thanks a lot, Bob. That's some great feedback. Next feedback is from our good friend Luke Carswell from Black Rifle Model Works. He writes in to say, "Hey guys, first I would like to say another great episode. Listening to you guys discuss from Adam Savage's video, imposter syndrome. I think this is a thing that stretches even outside of the hobby, and it is something that I constantly suffer from. In my professional life, people are often looking to me to help them make things better, and often in one of the most extreme and worst situations of their life. After years of training, study, and experience, I often think about these events afterwards, and as Adam talked about, I find myself expecting the tap on the shoulder with someone telling me I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing and to just clear out my locker. This is despite others looking at me as the quote expert and dealing with any given situation in a positive way for all involved. In relation to the hobby, I for one think the imposter syndrome comes mostly from people's humility and actually not realizing just how good they actually are. Man, Luke, I couldn't agree with you more on that. We are all our own biggest critics, and we know all the flaws in every single build that we do, but that often others don't see. I always describe it as a swan-like personality. It's graceful and serene on the surface, but paddling like crazy underneath the water. Again, great episode, and keep up the good work. And Jensen, you are a master of what you do. You have no idea how good you are. Take it easy, guys. Luke. Man, there's a lot of good points in there, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's coming from a great soul, salt of the earth kind of individual. Luke is about as good as they come. And, his words certainly mean a lot. And I really appreciate his feedback. It really makes you think a lot, especially with his role and the work he does and the help he provides. It's a really good perspective. And I think that's an important thing that he can provide. And I love it. And I love him, to be honest. He's a great friend, and, super thankful that he shared that story with us. Turn it over to Jensen. I know he's probably got a personal connection there too.
Yeah. I mean, thank you. It always feels weird to receive praise or compliments. I usually don't know how to handle it. But yeah, I really appreciate it. It's kind of just to echo what JB said. Luke is just a standout role model for everything this community is great for. Just if you were to design a person who you'd want to be friends with, who you'd want to go to with your troubles. Luke's the guy. So yeah, hearing that story and that sort of praise from him is special. Yeah, he's just a sublime specimen of a person.
Well, and he obviously feels the same way about you, which I agree wholeheartedly with. But yeah, Luke's he's a real guy. I mean, you can say what you want about him as a modeler or whatever. I mean, I happen to think he's absolutely fantastic. I mean, he's a tremendous modeler, but he's real. Every time you talk with Luke, you feel like you've known him. I've never met him in person. I feel like I've known him my whole life. He's a great guy, and really echo what he says about his feedback about imposter syndrome. Like I said last time when we discussed this, Jensen, if Adam Savage, who is working for, Industrial Lights and Magic, feels imposter syndrome, there's no way the rest of us aren't going to feel that at some point in our hobby or even in our own professional lives.
Yeah, it's definitely the understanding that these feelings are normal. Life is up and down. Emotions are up and down. And it's just kind of learning to accept that, yes, there are going to be down moments in every aspect of life. And it's just basically how we deal with them and how we accept them and how we channel that energy. Yeah. So if someone like Adam is feeling it, we are obviously going to feel it.
Yeah, Grant. And I think that's why we do what we do and the way we do it. I mean, we've been accused of being overly optimistic and positive, but I think that's the reason why we do it, because life is full of all kinds of bad stuff. Let's not focus on that. Let's try and look at the positive and try to enjoy this hobby for what it is.
I definitely agree. It's, we're putting plastic and together with glue and putting paint on it. And you know what? It's fun. It should be fun. And it is fun. So there's no reason, say what you say, but there's no reason to be down on things and stuff for people for that. I like his comment about, the imposter syndrome comes from people's humility. I cannot agree more. We all see that great model by that modeler, and the first thing out of their mouth is, oh, yeah, it's not that good, yada, yada, yada. It is good. You're doing great work, and, everybody sees their own flaws, and that's what it is. But, everybody does great work, and we're here to, make sure everybody understands that and is happy with what they're doing. Like you said, there's too much crazy stuff going on the outside of this hobby. Let's just have fun.
All right. We also have some feedback from another good friend of ours, Mr. John Everett, the one, the only. And he says, I quite enjoyed episode 68, and I can certainly relate to using models as a form of therapy. I can also attest as to the quality and beauty of Bases by Bill. They really are just that nice. TJ was right when he said that one day each of us will produce our best model, our magnum opus, our peak kit. But there's another lens through which to consider his viewpoint. Our best model will not be the one which stands out at a contest. Rather, it will be some terrible old glue bomb constructed by a child who wanted to emulate what they saw the adult in their life doing at the kitchen table. Years, perhaps decades from now, long after we are all dead and buried, that terrible old model will be rediscovered by that child now grown, who will suddenly remember the forgotten collection of plastic and the wizened old parent or grandparent from whom they received help and coaching in its construction. And in that way, each of us has a chance to live a little longer, linger in the minds and memories of the people we know today. And those will be the best models we've ever built, our greatest achievements in skill construction. And in 1979, there was never a better, more sublime, or more impressive Lego offering than was set number 928, the Space Cruiser and Lunar Base. All the best, John Everett. I want to talk about this for a minute, as far as generational modeling, and passing things down. I want to start with JB and then also Erik, because, Erik's, building with his son right now. But JB, I know that your relationship with your father was foundational in everything that you do in the hobby.
Yeah, Scott, I think, John really really tugs on the heartstrings for this one, for that matter, at least for me. And it's really interesting, he says, about the most important models. I look at the FJ I'm building right now. I look at the Stug that I recently completed, arguably probably some of my best work, but it's not the work I cherish the most. Some of the work I cherish the most actually is the worst looking model I've ever built. So the King Tiger that I built with my dad, first model I ever built, I have it sitting right behind me. if I had to get rid of everything in my collection and keep one model, that would be it. Doesn't matter. Everything else doesn't matter. Even though it might be my best work. Again, I reiterate, those models that connect me to a past generation, that's what matters most. And some of the work that, again, if I even take a broader sweep, like if I had to get rid of even models in my collection, so your stash, there are certain models in my stash that has a connection to him, or even my family for that matter. You know, my grandma got me the Dragon Leopold when I was 14 years old. That model is not the best model out there of that. And I don't know if I'll ever build it, but I'll never get rid of it. And some of his finished works, I have the old, oh man, I don't know if it's Aurora, but it's the X15 that was box scale, I think. I have an old box scale B24 of his. And then when I go back to my mom's house, I'm going to get some of his other finished work that he completed later in life. And those models are the ones I cherish the most. As I mentioned, everything else on the shelf is expendable. And, you know, coupled with that is not only the models that I had with my dad, but the models I have with my friends as well. You know, I'm very fortunate to have models from almost everybody online right here. Jensen's Lee, I look at Daniel Brooker's Panther 2, I look at Sam's King Tiger, and it's those family and friendships that I can have on my shelf, that those are the most important things. And, you know, when I have a kid and go on to the afterlife, you know, maybe there's some moments that I can pass on to them as well. But I echo a lot what John Everett said. It's that perspective. You know, I love the P word, perspective. I think, you know, if you can get a handle on perspective, a lot of things in life aren't so difficult after all. And I think I really enjoy what John said there. And something that I always think about and I always have at the forefront of my display case, or when I even introduce the hobby to people like coworkers and friends that aren't familiar with it, it's always, it's always anchored on those things of, you know, my dad, that bond that I'll cherish forever. And then also the experiences that I share with friends today. Those are the most important things. So yeah, I love this topic. Maybe we expand on it with everybody at a later episode.
Erik, I'd like your feedback on that as well. You know, you got the chance to sit there and actually build with your son. You know, what do you think about what John said?
Well, it's great. The showing him just the ways and teaching him patience, and it's fun to watch when he gets that light switch where he's like, oh yeah, you know, like it's seeing his excitement as he's building something, or showing him like, you know, don't use that grit sandpaper because it'll show up later. Or, you know, it's taking him under my wing and showing him what I've learned. And in doing that, in teaching him something, I may learn a different way, or, you know, some way to improve. But it's, you know, I've got memories of building with my grandfather, you know, sitting in the rec room at their house while he's telling me, oh, this should be that color, this should be that color, you know, and, you know, passing that information off down to my son and watching his excitement. And that's what makes it worth it. Like he's into it. He's building all kinds of stuff. When we were on vacation in Ocean Shores, he built a jet while I was building my Sherman, and he loved it. He ate it up. And then, you know, we got back and he's been building this Panzer III, and watching his face when I'm like, you got to get rid of the seam on the road wheels. And he just, all the emotion drops out of his face and he's like, what? So, you know, but also it's the other thing of trying not to impose my own biases of what I've already learned, and trying not to, and keep it fun for him and not make it, you know, but passing on the skills is always fun. And trips down memory lane. In fact, I've got a model that my grandfather built of a 1/72nd scale A20 that he built back in the 70s. And then Jim Bates gave me the idea to buy the same kit. And so I'm going to build the same kit in flight like his is, and put them on a base together. And that'll be kind of another homage to my grandfather. Yeah, it's watching him learn, watching him build is very, and the excitement, that's what makes it worth it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, the hobby of actually building model kits is a great hobby, But when you add in friends and family, I think it really takes it to another level. I mean, these social events we go to and getting to know people and getting to meet, your son and your daughter, Erik. That's what for me really, really sets this hobby apart, aside from the little bits of paint on these little plastic things.
The one thing I want to end on is a quote that I really like. A person dies twice, once when they take their last breath, and the last is when the last person they know says their name. And this hobby is a mechanism for the latter. It is something that can help transcend generations. And yes, there are significant life events that you will always remember that person, but this hobby is a part of those life events. And it's something that, makes me remember my dad and even my grandpa. And those memories that I cherish are passed on through this hobby. And I hope to do the same with the next generation of Benani. So really deep topic there, John Everett, not the typical plastic posse Jethro type of vibe, but really appreciate the input. It's a really deep conversation, really one that we should unpack a little bit more in a future episode.
Well, and it seems like our stinger on the Legos made an impression with him as well. So anyway, final bit of feedback. Paul Wheeler has a suggestion. He says, hey, I had a thought. It would be great if we could all get together at a set time around our Mac builds at Nats so that we can meet each other and look at the builds all together. Man, that's a great idea. What do you guys think?
100%.
Definitely agree.
Yeah, we need a group picture. One of the biggest unfortunate things that didn't happen at Omaha was we got plenty of pictures of the models of all the Shermans, but we didn't get a picture of the modelers all together. So we definitely need to organize a group photo, not only of the pieces, but the modelers as well, because we're certainly thankful for the support on the Mac group build. And I need to get cranking on mine. So great idea, Paul.
Yeah, we will work on the logistics on that, and then we will let everybody know before Nats. That's a great idea. Thanks a lot, Paul. Well, we appreciate the feedback that everybody sent us. Remember, you can send your feedback and suggestions to us via email at plasticpossepodcast@gmail.com. All right, well, now is the time for our special interview segment. We had a chance to sit down with a really great individual that we got to meet again at the NWSM show that we went to back in February up in Erik's turf there. And this modeler's friend's name is Kit Headley. He's a fascinating guy. He's actually a designer for Microsoft, essentially a model builder of sorts and designer who actually works for Microsoft. And he has some really great perspectives on not only the hobby as a job, but also the hobby as a hobby. So hopefully you really enjoy this interview. I know we had a really great time talking to Kit, and hopefully we'll get to talk to him soon. So here's that interview.
Good day, listeners. We have a really exciting interview today. I'm certainly stoked to get to know a person that we met just recently at the Northwest Scale Model Show at the Seattle Museum of Flight. This gentleman's name is Kit Headley, and he is a professional model maker turned amateur model maker. And it's a really interesting story. His work is absolutely phenomenal, and we just can't wait to dig into it. So, Kit, how are you doing today?
I'm all right this morning. Just hanging out here in my garage/workshop, sitting at my workbench.
Nice. So our listeners can't see, but Kit has probably one of the best backgrounds at a model bench. So we'll certainly have him post a picture we'll have it part of the show notes so you can see, but it's pretty sweet. Along with me today, I have my two lovely co-hosts, brothers from another mother, Scott Gentry out of Utah. How you doing today, Scott?
Doing great. How are you guys?
Fantastic. And then I also have Grant coming in from California.
Hey guys, how's everybody doing?
So before we jump in to get to know you, Kit, I really want to focus on one project that kind of drew my eye to your work at the show at the Museum of Flight. One of the things I thought was not only your large display of models that were like honestly crisp and clean and just really was presented well, but one of them stuck out kind of more than the rest, and it was the Hawker Hurricane. And for our listeners, we'll certainly post a picture, but it's a 72nd scale Hurricane banking over a water squall. The water is made out of epoxy, but I was really baffled. Like, how did this even happen? So Kit, I'd love for you to talk us through, that project, and specifically, like, how did you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the water there's a little bit of a cheat in the water, whereas it's a printed piece. So it is a 3D printed in clear resin. You say epoxy, I mean, similar kind of thing. But it is actually a 3D print that I modeled in CAD. And then we printed actually where I work in my office. So we have a lot of capability there. And so it's got some translucency in it. It came out as just kind of a grayish translucent when I first did it. And so I had to tweak it with colors to try to make it look like actual water. Did a lot of green tints and blue tints and whatnot. And then I added Mod Podge on the surface to give kind of that ripply effect. Because when I'm not the greatest CAD modeler, but I do have a little bit of the capabilities, and I have the facilities. So it was real smooth when I first started, and the Mod Podge kind of blew me away as far as how easy it was to create that kind of ripply texture. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do that in CAD, and was like, well, this is a nightmare. I can't. There's no way. To try to create randomness in CAD is not my specialty. That plus a little bit of the cotton swab in Elmer's glue to create some of that little foam sea spray, and that's basically it. And so one of the things that I was like, well, my coworker that I did that with, the guy that printed it for me, I was like, well, next time we do this, I want to put a fish in it. And he was like, yeah, we can do that. So I've actually got a little miniature version of the same thing that's got a little balloon shark in it, essentially. So I think I will be doing that again, but I'm going to make it a little more interesting by actually putting something in the water.
God, I love it. Apologies. I forgot it was 3D printed. I think the thing that surprised me the most is you don't see any layer lines. There's nothing on it.
Yeah, I certainly had to polish the edges out real nice. And that is certainly a decision on how you build those layers. Matters a lot to the way that the actual clarity presents through it. Again, where I work, we do a lot of these prints as far as like printing things that are solid in real life, but we print them as clear pieces so we can actually see the internal workings of them. And we'll often do that and polish them up. So it's an interesting, the way that it kind of layers up, like you said. If you're looking through across the layers themselves versus if you're looking parallel to the layers, if you're looking across the layers, you can see them and it gets really cloudy. It kind of presents as cloudy. You can't really see the layers as far as I recall, but it does present as cloudy. Versus if you're looking perpendicular to them, it can be crystal clear. I've been really impressed with what I've seen from my coworker doing that. Yeah,
it's certainly gorgeous. And not to take away from the aircraft as well, the little Hurricane was great. What kit was that? Was that Airfix?
Yeah, I kind of forgot to talk about the actual kit, right? No, it's Arma.
Oh, nice.
I'm a big Arma fanboy. I love their stuff.
I think most of us are now. They're certainly little gorgeous kits. So
yeah, they brought you in with the Mooserer, right?
That's right. Now I'm hooked. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. So I'm all in for Braille scale, divine scale, aircraft. So
yeah, not only aircraft, but also the scale, right?
That's right. That's right.
Broken in two ways.
So, in addition to that, we covered the aircraft, we covered the water. I think one of the things that kind of caps off and is consistent throughout your work is the base that you put it on. Can you just talk a little bit about, what it is in essentially, that white base with your logo on it?
Yeah, I mean, those are things that I wanted to get some kind of consistency in the way that I presented these things, because that's a part of it that I kind of enjoy, is kind of that building up that presentation, trying to make it a little bit unique. That's always an interesting problem to solve in my head. I was at both my wife and I are artists, so we're well familiar with art supply stores. And I was actually at an art supply store, Dick Blakely local art supply store up here in Seattle, that I was getting stuff for my wife for Christmas, I believe. And I walked down to the end of the store, and they just had these stacks and stacks of like all these wooden blocks, essentially. They had ones that were just raw wood. They had ones that were all painted white and ready to go. And I was like, well, that's a pretty easy solution. So I ended up picking up a whole handful or armful of these little wooden blocks that are about, I think they're like 2 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches, 2 inches tall, 6 inch by 6 inch. And they're just primed white. So what you're supposed to do with them in the art world, I guess, is you just paint on them. So they're like kind of a ready-made, quote unquote, canvas. That's just a solid wood block that you can make into whatever you want. And what I decided to make it into was some bases for some aircraft. At first, what I was doing, some of the early ones, some of the first ones I did, was I just put a piece of fabric on that base, which was kind of like a green fabric or something with a little bit of modeling in it. So it just looked like grass. But the idea was always to have that as kind of an environment for the aircraft to sit into, but also not be a distraction, not be the focus of it. So I kind of wanted it to be symbolic rather than very specifically realistic, so that it's kind of just a environment for the model to sit in. I thought that was an interesting way to go. And then they've kind of just, as I try to come up with new ideas to display this stuff, I've started, like, this one has the water on it, and then I did the little aircraft carrier deck, and I did a kind of a streaking scene with one of them, which I extended out longer because that was a longer block, and so that gives a little movement. So yeah, that's the stuff I'm always thinking about. But as far as the bases themselves, yeah, they're just straight off the shelf, Dick Blick, a product you can buy. They're ridiculously expensive for what they are. They're like, I don't know, $7 or $8 or $10 or something for this little block. But it does save a lot of time, because I bought some that are raw wood, and I was like, well, I can just paint them up. And that was that. They're still unpainted because it was I didn't want to spend my time doing that, right?
You got to paint, polish, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then get rid of all the wood grain and all that. But the other part of that I think you're referring to is the I also did some laser cut labels on them. So all of the text and script that I put onto the blocks is all just laser cut. Again, I did it at my office, is laser cut vinyl that I just cut out the description. So in other words, it's like what aircraft it is, what kit it is, because I think that's relevant and interesting to know. And then also a date on it, or a year at least, to remind myself when it was built, and my little Instagram logo on it. But I mean, when I thought a lot about it being like, oh, well, I'll do it in like black so it'll stand out or something. But I ended up doing a white on white. So it's a white script on a white block. And it gives it a very kind of museum quality thing that I like. When you go to the like art museum and it's all the stuff's on the wall and it's white on white, and it just, I don't know, I think it presents really well.
You can't tell he's an artist, John. White on white. It looks really good, you know. Yeah. One thing I've noticed in your model work is you're a really good storyteller. And whether it's a little, you know, kind of a little mini vignette, or whether it's just the piece itself, you seem to be really, really good at conveying a story with your subjects. Where does that come from?
I certainly appreciate the compliment. That's a heavy compliment. I've always struggled with that as far as like that's what I'd like to do. I appreciate that you say that your suggestion is that I'm successful in it. I've questioned that, I guess. But yeah, that's always the idea. I mean, one of the things that I struggle with today still is figures. I've only ever put one figure on, and it's a my A4. And that was because, well, I just couldn't justify not doing it. I love the ideas of putting figures in them, but I really don't want the guy with his hand in his lap, you know, and the other hand on his knee or whatever figure. So I am always trying to come up with, one of the things I'm always trying to do is be like, well, you know, this is right before it went in the water, or I really want to do one where I really want to at some point sculpt a figure that's like jumping out of an aircraft. So that it just, again, it's something a little bit different, right? I know that's kind of tangential to what you were asking about, but the storyline is actually something that I talk with my dad a lot about, because we do 2 days a week, we do a model chat night. He's in Oregon, I'm in Washington, and we do a little chat like this. And one of the things is I've never been one for stark realism as far as like building off the specific thing that I just want. I like something that is interesting to me. And I built a Dornier 225, I think, 215, I don't know, night fighter deal. And I put totally the wrong radar on it. Because it was the radar that I could get in photo etch, right? And one of the things that my dad and I always talk about is, well, as long as you come up with a story, it's okay, right? You can come up with like this one. It's got the radar on it that's way too late. So I came up with this whole like multiple paragraphs of why it was abandoned in some airfield, and then this late radar was slapped on it, and then it got shot down 2 days into service or whatever, just to kind of like off-road the guy that's going to come in and be like, well, that never happened. I do like telling those stories. And like you said, you asked me where it comes from. And that's hard for me to answer because I don't really feel like I'm always successful in it. I always want there to be a little bit more there, I guess, as far as just the aircraft sitting on your tank on a plank, but aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think let's talk about one of your pieces that maybe illustrates that, the Wildcat. And, you've got sort of, you've already spoken about your artistic interest and elements, but here you've got a presentation of an aircraft that the way that you present it is very highly technical. I mean, you've got the deck extension with the tail wheel. I don't know what they call that, but very from a presentation point for a small aircraft like that, you've really made it that much more interesting, and you've told the story just by the way that you presented that aircraft. So I guess that's kind of where I'm coming from. How do you incorporate technical elements as well as art elements? Where does that all come from?
Right. Yeah. I mean, that was one of those things where it was like, as soon as I started building the Wildcat, and that was, I think that was, I was at my father's house for Thanksgiving, and essentially he had this kit on his shelf that I had given him because I wanted him to build an Arma kit because I loved him so much. And I managed to get him he built the Hurricane alongside when I did mine. But he was like, I'm never going to build. I'm not interested in a Wildcat. And so I was down there and I was like, well, I want to build something. So I stole it back from him and I started building it when I was down there. But I mean, that was kind of my first foray into, I never explored the history of Wildcats. And so as soon as I saw a photograph of one sitting on an outrigger which is what that is, it's just it's basically an I-beam that's stuck off the side of a carrier, usually British, in order to just fit more aircraft on the deck. And that was, I believe they were doing that with Wildcats or whatever the British called them. They called them something else, but
martlets.
Yeah, with their martlets before they had folding wings, they stuck them out on these outriggers just to make more space on the deck because they wanted to keep them out there but not take up as much room. And I mean, as soon as I saw a photograph of that, I was like, well, I got to do that. That's really cool. And really cool and interesting and weird and would make a great presentation. Again, I guess just trying to get away from that kind of aircraft on a plank or whatever, or aircraft in a subtle bank or something like that. And like I said, it was something that I saw and I thought, well, I could do something cool with that. It kind of feels like one of those spaces where it's one of the things a lot of artists talk about, where it's like, well, I didn't come up with the idea came to me and I just couldn't help. I had to bring it out, right? Because it was cool and I wanted to see it in person.
One of the things I like about that aircraft the most is the fact that you didn't go overboard. A lot of modelers would have gone completely overboard, extended the deck, thrown a whole bunch of stuff on there, and you would have lost that. And to me, the whole thing about the Wildcat that makes that a beautiful, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say this, that makes this a beautiful diorama or vignette is the extension. Just the extension with the back wheel sitting is the best thing I've seen in a model in a long time. And you don't see that. And when people like yourself, and JB is another guy that does this really well, they bring out little subtleties and stuff like that in a model. It's fantastic. And, I want to congratulate you on that because you hit it perfect because you didn't go too much. You didn't put too much deck in it. You took the minimalist idea of what a modeler should do. And that's really, it's fantastic. And it's really turned out great.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one of the things, like I was talking about with the simplified bases. I kind of don't want to make it a diorama that happens to have an airplane. It's kind of that's kind of the focus for me is the aircraft and what's going on with that. So being able to build that in, and I certainly thought about. I did that overhead kind of profile of where the aircraft is, and then squared it off from centered it around the aircraft in order to create kind of a potentially awkward like cut in the deck.
Yep.
Just to make it kind of secondary, I guess. Yep. That was to an extent intentional. Yeah. But I certainly wanted to kind of get that whole scene, I guess, in there.
Yeah, you forced a perspective on the aircraft and the tail of the aircraft specifically, and the way you did that was fantastic.
Yeah, and I love the fact that it looks very like off balance and counter set, and the fact that I was originally going to block out that whole backside of it because I thought I kind of just didn't think of anything else to do. But when I saw it sitting, there's a couple photographs I think on my Instagram account when it was in progress, where I had it sitting on that thing and it was basically just a big T shape or L shape. And it just looked really dynamic like that. And I was like, well, I kind of want to, I did start building up some structure on the inside there. But I was like, well, I really liked that. That was really cool. So I'm going to push back to that as close as I can get, and then try to hide some of the internal structure. There's actually 2 brass rods that just run up right into the center of that, right in through the middle of that wall that it's sitting on. So actually, when I bring it to shows and stuff, the Wildcat comes off of the top. It's actually pinned in with a couple of just brass wires up into the wheels. And then this just kind of worked out because the tail wheel actually snaps into the little mount that it sits in. And that just, like I said, kind of worked out. It's all scratch built with just sandwiched up evergreen plastic, and then and some of it's laser cut, but that part is sandwiched. And so it kind of just snaps into that tail wheel, and then it slots into the little brass rods, and then the whole thing just slides off of the thicker brass rods that are in there. So it's really structural. I couldn't turn it upside down, but I could give it a pretty good shake, and it's not going to go anywhere.
So I think what we've hit on in these first couple projects alone, Kit, I think it's really interesting. You're such a unique individual that is a perfect blend between an artist's approach with an engineer's mindset and execution. And I'd love to hit the rewind button and get to know you more as an individual and, talk about, your background in a sense of when did you first start getting into modeling, even your professional and educational backgrounds, and kind of how it's all culminated to where we are today. Maybe, basic question, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, what's really interesting about what you just said was you just described a designer, right? Artistic with mechanical. And that is my education, right? So as far as how I got into modeling, like I said, I do my model chats with my dad still that's something that started in COVID, and then we started doing, which has been great. But he's modeled all my life. So he and one of his best friends, which the 3 of us were the ones that went to the Seattle show yesterday. It was always something that was in my life, and it's always something that he did. It was mostly 48 scale or quarter scale, as he calls them. German aircraft. He likes he's all about the paint scheme is the thing that brings him to stuff. He always wants to do interesting paint schemes and feels that the German stuff has the most interesting paint schemes. So, I mean, it's kind of always been there, right? And that is absolutely why I am in the field that I am in. I've always been artistic. I've always been drawing since I could pick up a pencil. And so that was always something that I was really interested in. And it kind of there was never a question in my mind on where I was going to go to school. I was going to go to art school. Didn't know what it was, and didn't learn until high school what industrial design was. I'd never heard those words put together before, but in high school I learned that, and I was like, well, that's what I do. I draw things that are mechanical, and I like things that are mechanical, and I like coming up with solutions in this, and like figuring out how to package stuff, and finding out how aircraft are made and what goes where, and how it all kind of fits together. And so I ended up going to design school and got a degree in industrial design. But one of the things about the specific school that I went to was it was not a great school for design. It was a great school for model making, because it was kind of a school where if you made a really good model, that kind of presented really well. When I came out of that school, I had a great portfolio in model making. And that's what I ended up doing. I went from Seattle to Texas to a firm that was just doing like off the shelf industrial design. Like you walk in the front door with an idea and walk out the back door with a prototype and a plan that we came up with for you. And I worked in the shop. So my job was making models, and it was making models of cell phones, making models of painting RC cars, making models of computers. I did everything from there's some of that stuff in my older profile on Instagram. Some of the more interesting stuff that I did. I kind of ended up running out of pictures of old stuff though. But I mean, everything from our shop did a full-size cutaway of a Peterbilt truck to these really cool radar dishes. Those are in my profile. That was one of my favorite projects that we ever did there. I always loved the scale stuff. It was always the most interesting. The architectural models and those kinds of things were always really fascinating to me. I don't know what it is about small stuff, but it's just cool. My degree, like I said, was in industrial design, but I ended up kind of in a model making space. And after being there a while, I came to a realization that I was like, well, like the designers, that's great, but they tend to sit in front of a computer all day, and that's kind of all they do. They draw and they sit in front of computers and draw quote unquote stuff. And I was like, I get to come out here and get to make stuff and like hold it in my hand, and I get to use the CNC machines on the side too, because I mean that's one of the things where you grow your skills in a profession is you're always pushing the envelope on your own projects, right? As long as it doesn't get out of hand, it's always really positive. Yeah, making stuff through there was always a passion of mine, and honestly, you know, there's the typical story of it's kind of when you're a kid, there's a lot of model making in kit form. When I went professional in it, essentially, whereas I was just doing it every day, the need to fill that niche in my brain was kind of met in that space. And it certainly fell off for a long time. Today, what I do is more about facilitating other people in being successful in making models because I do outsourcing. So essentially my job is to make sure that the people that are going to make the model, which in this case is computers, model PCs and that kind of stuff, or model laptops. My job is to make sure that they have what they need to be successful and know the right questions and ask those right questions to make sure that we're going to get what we want out of it and what we need out of it, and then guide them whenever I need to be successful. So I don't really get my hands on these days, right? And with that, the desire to kind of keep building stuff came back, and I was like, well, I could let's check out this. I haven't done it in a long time. All the models I've ever built since being professional have never been in kits. Kit sounds like a good way to go. Let's find something out there that's cool. And it's one of those things that took me a long time it's taking me a long time to figure out kind of where that space is between what I did professionally and what the focuses were there. And now what do I actually enjoy out of this? And how do I amp up that part of it and not amp up and lessen the part of it that was the job part, right? And that's kind of the deadlines for sure, but although you still kind of need those. And just obviously I don't have to build anything that I'm not interested in, right? So that's one of the things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about as far as like, well, if I'm not enjoying this right now, I need to give myself some grace and say, well, okay, then it's okay if I like pick up another project. So I do have a lot of Shelf of Doom stuff, but I'm trying to be okay with that because it's kind of like, well, I got to find my joy in it. And it's not, and if I'm pushing through it, there's value in that for sure, but I can't get to a point where it's like, feels like work, right? I don't know if that was an answer to your question. It was an answer to multiple of your questions, probably.
No, certainly. No, that's a great answer. You know, it's really good. You know, you mentioned connecting with your dad. He's always been a model maker. Do you go to shows with him? Do you travel around?
We have not been to many shows. I mean, like I said, this was, it's about a 4-year time frame that I've kind of gotten back into this. Coincides with COVID, not by accident, I'm sure. We went to the IPMS show, which was yesterday, or which was Saturday. What is it? Seattle IPMS Spring Show. We went to that. Must have been 4 years ago. It was before I got back into it, and actually, I picked up a couple kits in the vendor area on that show. I was like, let's try this again. But we used to, when I was a kid, we went to a few shows. It wasn't a focus by any means. This is the second show I've gone to in the time that I've gotten back into it. So I'm interested in going to more. I haven't been to a lot. You guys and the other podcasts are the ones that kind of amp me up for those shows, because you guys are the ones that are always, talking about how much fun you have at them. And I think that's, you guys are largely responsible for a lot of that resurgence, or at least a fair amount of it, because it does make it more appealing to think about it. Because I know it's one of the things that I always feel, I have to admit, I feel a little bit cynical about when you guys start talking about that, is the podcast teams are kind of as close to celebrities in the model making space as we've got, right? And so when you guys talk about, well, we go to shows and we meet all these people and it's amazing, it's kind of, you kind of look, I can't help but look at that a little bit cynically and be like, well, yeah, I mean, everyone wants to talk to you guys because everyone knows who you are, and you guys, you guys open yourselves up to this and kind of make it available and and everybody knows you when they walk in the door, right? Versus it's really easy for me to go to a show and not talk to anybody and just like look at some models and maybe buy some stuff off the vendor tables, which is fun. But at the same time, it's kind of, it's not the same experience. But I have to say though, that given that this was the first show I've ever attended after joining joining the Northwest Scale Modelers Club, which is a free club to join. It's just you just show up. That's what I air quotes join. But it's one of the things that I enjoy going to. It's once a month, and it's at the Museum of Flight. So I mean, come on. But ever since, kind of meeting the people in that group, this was the first time I'd ever gone to a show, and actually I knew a bunch of people who were there. So I kind of get that. I kind of understand a little bit more about that experience, and it definitely holds more appeal in that way. So the club thing is definitely new to me, and I definitely feel a fair amount of value out of it. It's really good.
Yeah, the collaboration and the inspiration that you get from people that share your passion, and it's always in a different way, right? I mean, there's only one Kit Headley, there's only one Jim Bates, there's only one Josh Scott. They're everybody's unique and brings sort of their own individual flavor to it. So that's really, it's really exciting. You mentioned that feeling sort of, I don't know, I can't remember what word you use, but sort cynical. Cynical about, that when you make the hobby social, I think it really takes on, as far as fueling your mojo, it really takes on an important role, at least for me, as to fueling your desire to do the hobby, because, you might run into you at a show and you might look at that Wildcat and that presentation and go literally like, I've never seen anything like that. I've never really considered taking that approach to a display, and it inspires you. It makes you want to go, wow, maybe I could do something like that at some point. And, for me, that's rocket fuel for, when we go to these events, getting to meet people, like you and all the people that we get to meet. It really fuels my desire to do more and do different things.
Cool. Yeah, I certainly hope that I'm able to do that in some small way. I know that one of the things that I kind of run up against a lot of times with that is I do have a lot of fancy tools, right? I mean, when I came out of school, I went right into a professional shop space where we had CNC machines and 3D printers weren't quite a thing yet, but now they are. I'm always pulling up the fancy tools to make this stuff. And so one of the things, like I said, when I run up against, like I did a little Spaceman Spiff saucer a long time ago. I think that's buried pretty far back in my Instagram these days. That's one that I made with all the tools that I had back in the shop in Texas that we had. And one of the things that like came up over and over again, I was posting progress for stuff on that in the RPF, the replica props forum. There's the meme, right, of the guy that's like 5 minutes into this guy's DIY video. He's like, so just walk over to your, CNC lathe and press start up on it. And I feel like,
it's the owl, the meme that you see, like, here's how you draw an owl, draw 2 circles and then draw the rest of the effing owl,
Yeah, right. And so I feel like I'm like hamstringing people a little bit that way, and I don't want to, because I try to do the yes, I did it this way, but there's hopefully this is a jumping off point. If you have different tools, then you can think about it in a different way. I mean, I just posted at the Seattle show at the Air Museum, but I ended up running into John Miller there. And I've been, he approached me to start writing some articles for him. And so I just recently posted one, or he recently posted one that I sent him on doing paneling on just out of adhesive. So essentially, instead of using like photo etch, like a lot of the paneling for, in this case, it was a AH-1, a Cobra helicopter. It was a really great photo etch set that I had that had all this paneling that just went along the bottom. It was all just like flat things with little rivet details or little sections or whatever that were a little bit embossed. I was like, okay, well, I really want that set again because it worked really well last time I used it, but I can't get it in the time that I need it. So I'll just cut them out of vinyl, because when you mask all your details on your aircraft and then you paint it all out, you're like, well, that's kind of a cool like step that could I just leave the tape there? And so I tried it, and absolutely you can. You kind of seal in hopefully, this is the theory. I mean, that model's only been done for a few months, so a few years down the line, we'll see, but I probably won't care at that point. But anyway, the theory is kind of you put this adhesive on and then you basically seal in the edges, if that's even really necessary, but so nothing peels up or anything. So I feel like that was really successful. And that's the article that I sent to John for the model paint solution website. That's one of the things where all that stuff was laser cut, right? I went into Illustrator, I drew it all out, and then I laser cut it all. But you could do it with tape. Like it would take some more precision, just because you couldn't draw it in a computer and then print it out, essentially, which is kind of what I did. But also people have Cricuts, right? A Cricut would work for that. Hopefully when I come up with these ideas, what I want to be able to do, and kind of my communicator aspirations, I guess, is be able to be like, yes, I did it this way. And that is a great way to do it. But there's also other ways to do it if you have other tools.
This is a great little video that you posted to your Instagram of making that set. That was really, really interesting. Like you said, I think it's pretty unique.
You said something very interesting, and I think it's important to maybe double click on. You mentioned the cynical impression of a lot of what we talk about going to shows and the experiences we have compared to, the average modeler, I'll say, because you're right. I was there too. You go to shows.
You walk in the room with the wall broken. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been there where I've walked in and I've gone to shows all across the country by myself sometimes. And like you said, solitary. And it's interesting because the story is very consistent among a lot of people we talk to. But it's like, what's that moment to break the ice? What's that inflection point that turns this solitary type of event and activity into something that's, once it happens once, it kind of transforms your opinion, I think, of going to model shows. Like you mentioned meeting people at club meetings. I think that's I think that is a fantastic way to get to know people. But I think one of the other things is, taking notice of other people's work and just talking to them. I think that was one thing facilitated at the Northwest Model Show, where it was much more of a social gathering where a lot of people came separately. But I don't know, I felt like we connected a lot. Now, granted, maybe I'm a little biased because I have, like you said, we are a podcast. We do draw a little bit of attention, but I'm really interested to hear your thoughts more about that, and maybe like being able to relate to a lot of people, and I don't know, just sharing like what helped you get to know more people in the hobby. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I mean, my first step into that club, the Northwest Scale Modeler Club, which is it's the first Thursday of every month, so it's kind of an odd time, which actually helps me a lot, because when I was talking to Jim Bates at the show yesterday, he was like, "We really missed you at the AMPS show." I mean, the AMPS meeting, because they started up a new AMPS chapter, right? Which is awesome. I think I only have like one armor thing I've ever done, so I'll have to start. I want to go to that, but it's on a Saturday, and my son is 9 and my daughter is 12. They both do soccer. My daughter does gymnastics. So Saturday, there's no way. I mean, yesterday when I went to the show, that was a Saturday, right? And I ended up missing a couple of my kids' big games. I go to all their games, and we had this planned way ahead. So I felt a little bit guilty about that, but at the same time, and also my dad came up for this show, so it was kind of like, well, yeah, I'm not going to miss it. But yeah, I felt a little bit guilty about that. But anyway, being able to go to that, the fact that meeting is a little bit outside of the normal span, which a lot of that stuff happens on Saturday. The AMPS meeting happens on Saturday. The IPMS meetings happen on Saturday, and there's just no way I can make that. But the fact that it happens on a Tuesday night helped me out and gave me the door to be able to walk into that space and be able to participate in it. The other thing that pushed me on that one was the reason I went to that. The very first meeting I went to was the one right after the previous Seattle Flight Museum show, Model Mania. So I went to that show, and I guess, honestly, I guess there's potentially another in that one of my coworkers, actually, he displays stuff at that show every single year. So he was there with he does amazing cars and figures. His name is Eric Sayers, and he took a whole bunch of ribbons yesterday and a couple of the best ofs, well deservedly. His stuff is amazing. When he went to that show, it was kind of like, okay, well, I maybe I know some. Yeah, it's a little bit open because I know some people that are doing this too in this space, like physical space. But then also I was like, yeah, I just want to kind of check it out. I mean, club sounds like it might be kind of goofy, but I'll check it out. Yeah, like I said, it was that the first meet right after that show that I was kind of like, yeah, cool, I'll go in, and I kind of just went in. I didn't bring anything with me, and I kind of just sat down and didn't know anybody, but it wasn't a bad time. So I came back the next time, and I was able to, the second time I came in, I brought some of my stuff because I saw that was kind of what you do is there's a little bit of show and tell there, which is always fun. So I brought some of my stuff in and I was able to talk about it, and that kind of helps to break the ice as well, because you're already chatting about stuff and giving people stuff to ask you questions about, and you're asking questions about stuff. So that's fantastic. I mean, just breaking that into that space and being able to go to that club, that was great. But another one that, like you said, even if that wasn't an option, the other thing that I feel was really positive is I volunteered to help judging. So even if I didn't know anybody there, right, that would have been an instant, like getting to know people that are there. And that's certainly something that I felt apprehensive about that. And I mean, in retrospect, I don't feel like I contributed a whole lot to the judging discussion, but I mean, it was my first time ever doing it. And Jim helped me out a little bit, and we kind of just worked through it, and I offered my opinions and ideas when I could. But at the same time, it was just, kind of being part of that discussion. Outside of clubs, if that's not an option, which I guess is kind of where I started as far as like, these are the barriers of me going to normal club meets, being able to go to the show and volunteering for something. Again, I had no idea what I was doing, because I walked in, there was like this is where the judging meet thing happens sign. And I was like, okay, I'll go into that room and I'll like raise my hand when they ask for volunteers. And they, at the end of the meeting, they were like listing all the people that were in groups. And I was like, whatever list those people signed up for, I didn't sign up for. So I don't think I'm going to be on this list. At the end of that whole judges meeting, I just kind of walked up to the guy at the front and I was like, well, whatever list that was signed up for, I didn't do, because I didn't know I was supposed to do that. But whatever holes there are, I am happy to fill.
I think you bring up a great point. I mean, judging whether it's your first time or your 25th time, again, I think that fuels relationships and conversations, because the 3 or 4 or however many people are on your team, you look at a common subject, and Jim Bates, he might have a completely different view on the model than you do. And so it gives you a chance to both make an evaluation, then discuss that evaluation. And I think there's inherent value outside of the social construct into, things that you maybe haven't considered, or maybe giving you ideas of how to try new things yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with the category that I ended up helping out with judging in was a 30-second CL aircraft. That is a pain in the butt. Like those things, every single one on the table was amazing. Right? And it wasn't a huge category. There weren't that many, but at the same time, like there was nothing on there that like be like, okay, that one's out. Right. I was like looking at all of them, like praying for a crooked wheel or something, or a split seam or some deal like that, and being like, well, there's nothing here. And I mean, the fact that I was on, the reason that I ended up being kind of put on that one was because I think 2 of the judges that were on it had to recuse themselves because their models were on the table. The one I ended up getting into was certainly not one of the easier ones to do. And so it was great to be able to kind of, have that feel for, or get kind of that perspective on like, well, how do we find stuff out of this? And how do we determine what do we judge on? And also it was a little bit eye-opening too, when we went through the IPMS kind of standards of it, where it was like, I was like, well, I really like this one because it's got all the RBF tags on it, and they're all hanging straight down. They look good, right? But it's kind of like, well, that's a little bit beyond construction, so let's think about this first, and then go on to the extras. And one of the things that I do that it's hard to like get past is like, well, I really like the color of this one. Right. And it's like, well, that should be secondary or tertiary, maybe, instead of being like, well, I like the color. So first place.
Yeah, that's one of the things that, when I first started judging a while back too, is that your personal, what you want comes into the first part of the judging. And when you start judging a little bit more and you start seeing, here's the pattern, and you bring up some fantastic points, and you bring up points that why people should volunteer and judge. Exactly why they should volunteer, because they're going to learn, first of all, what the rules of IPMS are, what the rules of AMPS are, what the rules of open category judging are. You're going to learn all that. Yeah. But the second thing is just going to help you as a modeler grow. Simple, easy. You're going to learn things in that couple hours that you have not learned, and you won't learn if you don't do it.
and it'll take you years longer. And that's a fantastic, that's a really good battle cry for why you people should volunteer and judge. And they don't think when you're first time judging that there's standards and there's practices that everybody follows and stuff like that. It's not just freelance. You bring up some great points, and we do appreciate that.
Yeah, and one of the things that I want to highlight out of that story I just told is essentially like you also don't have to know what you're doing. Like the first time you go in, I was like, okay, this is the room I'm supposed to be in, so I'm just going to go hang out in there until someone tells me what to do. And then nobody did, so I was like, what do I do? Right,
exactly. And that's how people get more integrated into the hobby, and they become more of a hobbyist, and you have more friends at shows, and you don't get that lonely feeling. And we've all been through it. I've gone through it myself. I've gone to shows and I just walk in, walk around, and then I walk out, and you just, nobody talks to you and stuff like that. But by doing that, you're the two people you met before, then the next two people, then the next two people. Going to clubs, you're going to meet people, you're going to see people there. We're all fun. It's fun, and you learn, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think it was a good experience. And one of the things that I went into that hoping for was, and this is specifically from you guys. And when I say you guys, I mean all the podcasts, really, because I listened to multiple of them. But one of the things that I really wanted to come out of that judging with, which I didn't land in this case, but that's fine, was I really wanted to judge ships because I like building ship models. I haven't built many of them. It's kind of you get so overwhelmed with I started describing building ships when I was a kid as basically you're building an entire model that's a cockpit, right? Because it's just a bunch of junk. It's really easy to get kind of, when that 350 scale, you get overwhelmed because there's just so much going on. So I really wanted to, I was really, and this is what I'll push for in the next, like, judging, when I go to the next show, is I would love to land on a judging ships, just because just getting some other people's perspective on like what we're looking for and looking at, and kind of one of that thing. Because I mean, that was another one where when I went to that table that had the 350 ships on it, it was definitely like well, they all look amazing. They all look like they're a ton of work, but this one's really pretty. So that's my winner.
Well, you do have up there one of the modelers that, as far as ships go, now he usually does 700 scale, but Tim Nelson, oh my gosh, the ships that he does. When I went to my first nationals was Las Vegas a couple years ago, and he brought I believe it was a USS Tennessee. I hope I get the ship right, a 1/700 scale. But I still don't know what he used for rigging. I swear it was like he got a Black Widow to spin the threads for the rigging. It's so fine. But then he painted like 100 1/700 scale figures and put them on there, and it was just, it's really amazing. And they're not just like a blob of color. I mean, he actually painted these figures in 1/700 scale. It's mind blowing. So yeah, make sure you leverage Tim, because he's amazing.
I don't know that I've ever seen one of his ships. He brings in aircraft to the meetings. And I mean, obviously, that's one of the things about like when your meetings at the Museum of Flight, like you're getting it on airplanes, right? So yeah, he's brought in some amazing resin interwar seaplanes and float planes and that kind of, and I love that stuff, like the Schneider Cup stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
He's done some amazing ones. That blue one, which was the like Porco Rosso inspired thing, but the real version of it. That thing's amazing. And I have several of those kits, but I have yet to get into a serious resin kit, just because I love solvent so much, and you can't use it with resin.
Yeah.
I hate super glue, and I love solvent, and like resin is the kryptonite. Yeah.
Bonus points that you threw down a Porco Rosso reference. That's one of my favorite movies. I'm a huge Miyazaki fan. So anyway.
Right. Hopefully you have some of those kits, because the instructions in them are amazing. I mean, they're just worse, the instructions, because there's this whole like 4-page spread on what his inspiration was for. This is not a real aircraft, but this is the one he based it off of, and this is what he changed. And it's amazing. It's kind of like you buy that kit, the fine mold kits of those.
Yeah.
I have the 48 scale of his aircraft, and also the 72nd ones. I have this like idea in my head. I'm sure you've seen all of his watercolors. right? Where there's one where it's what's the American's name? The blue one, right? Taking off from the water, and then the Porco Rosso is right behind it. It's a watercolor painting. I would love to recreate that style of art in 3D. I'd like to try to do that. That's one of the things that's on my long list of like, someday we'll do that.
Miyazaki's love for aviation comes through in a bunch of his films. Oh, yeah. You know, the Wind Rises, his last one is great too. I don't want to get too far off of the subject here, but that's awesome. And Tim, getting back to ships, Tim is a great resource. I think he had the Tennessee at the last NWSM, but you're going to have to hit him up next time you see him.
Yeah. I mean, he had a whole stack of rockets at the Northwest Scale Modeler show. And yeah, I've seen a number of his World War I kind of stuff. But I didn't know he did ships. Okay. Yeah. I'll definitely bug him for that. One of the things that, and you talk about that rigging, right? I've got all this, Infini model stuff, right? That gets pretty darn thin, but it's still way out of scale for 350 rat lines, right? That's what I've been using. And I mean, one of the things that I have not figured out, and if you guys know this or if any of your listeners know this, I want as many links as I can get. Whip antennas, man. Some of that like super thin, super straight whip antennas off of like armor vehicles and all that kind of stuff. Where the heck do those come from? I mean, I actually talked to Tim a while back and he gave me this, well, there's this guy that makes them out of like carbon, but you have to call him on the phone. You probably won't answer. And I haven't talked to him for 20 years. So I'm like, okay, that's not okay. I can try, but where on Amazon can I get it?
Seriously, where's my link?
Acupuncture needles. Acupuncture needles. A lot of people use very, very thin acupuncture needles. Sand down the tips of them so the point's gone, and you can use. And they have small little on the ends of them. They have a little bit of a spring on them, so it gives you the kind of spring look. You got to go small, but they do work really well.
I'm writing that down right now.
Cool. Yeah, the other part of that is there's a reason why a lot of guys build armor in 1/35 scale, because then you can get a machine brass antenna or something, but in 72nd scale, that might be a tall order.
Yeah, that, and one of the other things that's really difficult for me is just tapered tubes or rods or what. I've got a couple of these like brass turned masts, right? But there's like 5 in a package, and and one of them's the size you want, but you want 10 of those. Right. So that's another thing is like, I've got all this like evergreen stuff because I aspire to do more scratch building, but like, one of the things that they need to put on their list is tapered rods. That's one thing I'd love to get more of. Everything's in the real world. Everything's tapered. You do telephone lines, telephone poles, masts, whatever. It's all tapered.
So one of the things you mentioned, going to the show, judging, seeing other aircraft, I think it's interesting to point out, Kit, I think a lot of your models stand out because yours are mostly in flight, and that's not typical at a show. I don't know if you can maybe discuss like what was your takeaway? How do you think the judges receive that? Because that's atypical for IPMS. They want it square on a plank, and I love your A4 dropping the snake eyes. I mean, that stuff is really
square
cool.
On the plate, even though it's in flight. But yeah,
no, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. But I mean, it's like I don't know if you took anything away or got any feedback or anything from your work at the show. I'd be curious to know.
Right. I mean, that was one of the things that certainly stood out in my mind, for better or worse. I don't know. The A4 took first place in single jet. So
I must have loved it. I guess that null and void my point.
Can't complain with that. Yeah. So that was awesome. Yeah. I mean, I have a weird relationship with that, the in-flight thing. Cause again, I run up against this. I don't like doing figures thing. That's a problem with my in-flight one. Again, series of ghost planes. John Miller just gave me this guy right here, the Ghost of Kiev deal.
Oh, nice.
I opened that one up, and it's kind of a crunchy model, but it's a great idea, and it also like feeds so perfectly into my Ghost Planes series. Because again, I like doing stuff in flight, but I don't like doing figures. So or maybe don't like is the wrong phrase. I'm not comfortable with it, right? And buying stuff off the shelf is always difficult for me because I don't know why, but I have this aversion to being like, to be able to have someone be able to like pick out, oh yeah, that's the Tamiya figure from this kit or whatever. That bothers me for some reason. I want it to be different. Right.
The one good thing about figures in aircraft that are in flight is you've got helmets, so you don't have to worry about painting faces.
True. Yeah. Right. So yeah, that's the only figure I ever did in an aircraft was my A4, and he's got a helmet on. And I bought the Airfix kit for that because I went to Skyway Hobbies and talked to Emil, the owner there, and I was like, what's the best kit with a figure in it that I can build for this? Because that was for the Model Geeks group build. I wanted to do that one. But as far as my philosophy on doing the in-flight versus on the table, I certainly like the movement that you get out of that in-flight space. I assume that I'm going to get knocked for it, right? Because I always kind of assume that you're going to look at that and be like, well, there's a lot of detail in those, and that you just hid away, right? I also feel like there's a perspective that I feel a little bit too, that when you do it in flight, it's a little more toyish. It's a little less serious somehow. The thing that I run up against all the time is like honestly, like a Mustang, right? That dihedral of a Mustang with the intake under there is beautiful. The landing gear is really awkward, right? It looks dopey. It's cool that, the coolest thing about putting it on the ground is drooping the flaps and making that kind of unique. But it feels like the natural space where the aircraft exists and should exist and how it should exist is all closed up and sleek, right? I like that look. I like that appearance of the aircraft. That's the truism of it to me, right? That's honestly one of the reasons that I like seaplanes and kind of World War I aircraft is I don't have to make that decision. You can just bypass it. Yeah, I do feel like I said, I don't know if it's true that you get knocked for doing in-flight stuff, but I always kind of assume that you will. I always kind of assume that I will. Being in a contest and trying to win the award it's great. It feels good, right? But that's never my focus, right? I'm always trying to do something that satisfies me, right? As far as you value that element of storytelling more than you value whatever award you may or may not receive for it. Yeah, and like I said, the awards are awesome. I won't say they're not, but yeah, it's all about trying to do something different, do something unique, do something that I haven't seen before. And I guess that's where I run up against all those buying figures off the shelf kills me because it doesn't satisfy that desire of mine, I guess.
Yeah, I really agree with what you're saying. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. But the thing is that a Corsair does not look any better than when it's in this, an F1 Corsair does not look better when it's not flying. It looks better in the air. It looks so much better that the wings, the way it flies, and that just shows that you to me, it shows that, and this is just me personally, it shows that you're looking more of the actual design of the aircraft and how the aircraft looks and how it should look in flight, which, for engineers and that's what you do. Right. And to me, that's what I love about aircraft in flight when they show that, a Harrier on the ground looks like a pregnant toad. But when you put it in the sky, sorry, pregnant toads out there.
How do you really feel about that?
Yeah, but you put it in the air, and it's a beautiful looking aircraft. I've seen Marine Harriers fly missions, and they are beautiful. But you put them on the ground, oh my God, just walk away.
Yeah, and there's a weird little balance there where there are some aircraft that work really well that way and some that don't. I have a number of the Gotha HO-229s, the flying wing, right? It has the most awkward and weird looking landing gear. It's got a giant bulldozer wheel in the front of it and these two wheels in the back, and it's yeah, exactly. It's just 45 degrees angle up, right? When it's on the ground. The fact that that's so weird and awkward, I have to put it gear down because it's so iconic that way, right?
Yep.
It's also really sleek when it's wheels up, but it's just it's so weird and awkward and uncomfortable when it's wheels down. So that's one that I'd be well, I got to put that one wheels down. The A4 honestly was one that I went back and forth on because that's another one that looks really iconically stupid on its landing gear because it has that massive long gear to clear the giant nuclear bomb that it was supposed to carry. So it's like it comes to a point where it's like, and again, that's maybe what you're talking about as far as like there was this weird engineering solution to create this ability, this clearance, right? And that's interesting to me in a way. But for the most part, these aircraft are intended to be, their natural environment is in flight, and that's kind of where they exist most naturally. So that feels like the way they're supposed to be.
Yeah, a Chinook helicopter is the same way. I served in the military for quite a while, and I was around a lot of Chinook helicopters on the ground. Yeah. That thing looks like crazy bad, but you put it in the sky with both wings, both propellers spinning. It's beautiful. Yeah. It is. It's really a beautiful aircraft in the sky. You put it on the ground, and it just doesn't look right. And always the joke was that the aircraft, if it's not leaking, you don't get on it, right? Because that means it's out of fuel or fluid, or when it's going to crash. Or and a Chinook is mathematically it's not supposed to be able to fly. But so it's one of those things. It just looks beautiful in the sky.
The bumblebee of the military. Yeah, that's the one. That I have one of those in my stash, and that's one I will build at some point. We have the 160th flyover all the time out of Lewis McChord here, and those things are creepy. They're awesome creepy.
Yeah, I served at Fort Campbell for a while, and we had the 160, one of the squadrons of the 160th there, and their bumblebees and their Blackhawks and their Chinooks were there. Those are some scary looking birds.
Well, we've kind of alluded to it, Kit, but I want to kind of get back to maybe talking a little bit about what you do for Microsoft and kind of how that all came about. But when we first met you and we were kind of talking, it's kind of unusual. I don't really think of Microsoft as a company that would employ people that, build scale models. But tell us a little bit about that, how you kind of came into that and what a work week for Kit looks like at Microsoft.
I am not the only one that builds scale models. So like I said, when I started off, I was essentially a model maker and a fabricator. I specialized in paint for a while. I specialized in CNC machining for a while, turning stuff on the lathe, all that kind of stuff. So I learned all those skills in being able to, and when I was doing that, the shops that I worked for in Texas were really small. A dozen people at the most in the shop itself, 40 people in the company at all. And so that was a space where I got to wear, I had to wear a lot of hats, right? I ran one of those shops at one point, and I kind of did everything. And also it was kind of a space where I love this ability to make stuff. I'm really interested in it. So it was kind of like when we got a lathe, I was the one that was like, I want to learn that. Let's put me on that. I'll figure it out. I'll make the first thing I ended up doing was I made a bunch of little Christmas trees for holiday cards that we sent out as a company. And I was like, that's awesome. Low risk, right? I'll figure that out. But anyway, I got to wear a lot of hats in that space and learn basically the job from start to finish. So what I do now for Microsoft is we do build a lot of hardware. So all of the Surface products, which is the laptop I'm looking at you right now on, and our tablet devices, the Surface Pros and all that kind of stuff, and mouse, keyboards, all of that, and also HoloLens and Xbox. I make models of all that stuff, but I don't make any of those models. But what I do is it's my job to figure out who around the world is the best shop to build this model. So I have a list of partners that I use around the world that are basically one of the great things about working for a company as big as Microsoft is I get to use the best vendors in the world. And I mean, I use the term vendor, which isn't really appropriate. They're partners because we share information back and forth. We try to make them better. They try to help us make our products better. And so what I do there is essentially my clients are a group of around 40 industrial designers. They're the ones that are sketching out these new concepts, new ideas, new laptop ideas. They basically bring that spec to me and say, I need a model of this, and it needs to be in this color, and it needs to have these specs and work this way or whatever. We spend a lot of time on hinges on like the Duo device that we had. We spent a lot of time on those hinges. And what I do is I figure out if we're not going to make it in-house, which we do have a lot of capability to make stuff in-house at Microsoft. And that's actually, it's Building 87, which there's lots of YouTube videos on what we do there. That's one thing that, there's an opportunity potentially to explore that later. The things that we can do in-house, we can do pretty much anything in-house, but it doesn't mean we want to. When we're not going to do something in-house, which means we're either not adding value or we don't need it on a super crazy tight timeline or something, because my overseas work is usually it's kind of a standard built-in 2 weeks to turn anything around. So if that's a possibility, then that comes to me. And my job, along with my partner that I work with there, is we figure out who the best person in the world is to make this thing. And we send it there. And we send it to a number of different places, maybe get a couple quotes on it and figure out like what it's going to cost and what kind of budget they have, and figure out what that balance is on spec, timeline, quality, and decide where to send it. And then if they run into any problems or questions, then it's our job to kind of know, one, what those problems are going to be ahead of time, so we can kind of see them coming. And that's where the history of my work experience comes in, and then put them on a path that's going to be successful to make that model. And basically, it's all about returning the finished model that the industrial designer, which is again my client, loves.
So do you do proof of concept work or kind of prototyping before you hit a partner up, or is it just go straight from an idea on a wall or a piece of paper and go right to your partners?
It definitely depends on what level of maturity the design has reached. First step, typically 99% of the time, is 3D prints in-house. So 3D prints in-house are typically a 24-hour turn. Any one of our designers can put in a request for something. They generate CAD and send it to our printer, which is a person. They send it to them, and then the next day they'll have finished parts in their hands. They'll be printed, so they have their limitations. They're not usually something that functions super perfect. Is a little bit crunchy to function. And sometimes you'll do it in like 2x scale or something if you've got a tight mech in there or something like that to build out. But then that's almost always the first step, is we just like, let's get this thing in our hands and see what it feels like and see how big it is and see if we don't hate it just based on this. And then at some point when they're ready to spend a little bit more money and they know a little bit more about what they want, then when it's a full appearance model, like it needs to look like the thing for real, look and feel like the real thing, then that's typically when it comes to me. Sometimes there are machining exercises before then just to prove out a concept. But for the most part, what I focus on is appearance models.
Well, that's really, really interesting. I like John. I like his term crunchy. It's for a kid that lacks refinement. I think I need to start using that.
I love it. Lacks pedigree. It's crunchy. As we come to a close here, we'd love to understand, what's on your bench right now? What are you working on? We've talked some of your historical projects that have, really been a highlight, but I've seen a few things on Instagram, but would love to hear what's on your bench right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got so like I said, I do a model chat with my dad twice a week. He's working on a Roden Gotha bomber, one of these kind of guys, but a newer one, a biplane bomber thing from Germany. And so that one's like coming to my bench because he's like, well, I'll build it as long as you rig it. So we're going to figure that out. But in the meantime, before that one shows up, I'm working on a little Flower class Corvette, a little 350 scale Flower class Corvette. And that's one that the water, quote unquote, has been sitting on my bench for a long time. That there's a little bit about that on my Instagram, is how I did that water thing. Essentially, it was I did a mantelpiece in my house with just a big mahogany slab, and I cut the two ends off of it. So I ended up with these little blocks of mahogany. I had the chop saw out one day and was like, I wonder if I could do a water texture with the chop saw. And so I ended up just like doing all of these cuts along the side of it to just kind of, it took a long time. And I just basically adjusted all of the settings on my chop saw every single time to just kind of randomize it. And I ended up chopping this like water wave into this just block of mahogany and then carving out a space for the hull of the ship to sit. So that's been sitting on my bench for a long time. The basically finished water. There's some minor finishing to do still on it, but basically it's done. And then I painted it up to, look blue and look like water. And I was pretty satisfied with it. I'm working on the actual ship to put in that right now. That is one that, again, like I said, I like doing these 350 ships, but this is kind of one of the first ones that I've delved really deep into, like putting in the photo etch. And I built a Fletcher class destroyer a while back, which is one of the ships my dad was on in Vietnam, modified version of it. But this one's significantly smaller than that, because I figured I'd start somewhere a little bit smaller when I dived into all this photo etch stuff. So I'm a little bit intimidated by it, but I'm just working on it slow pieces at a time. In fact, I ended up picking up one of these little figure stand deals because I decided when I'm working on all these small parts, I've mounted my little deck to a figure stand holder because I got tired of breaking stuff off every time I handled my parts. So the Flower Class Destroyer is on my bench right now, but that also has been squirrel sidetracked to, I've gotten into the habit of doing a May the 4th build. So I had, I love the walkers from, in fact, there's a bunch of Lego Star Wars walkers behind me, I think, right now.
Nice.
Because I love the 2-legged walkers. I never been able to get into I love the idea of Gundam, but they all look like people. They're like, they're the scale of people. And I tend to like the robots that look not like people, like Ed 209 from RoboCop and that kind of thing. So I love the 2-legged walkers. And so I was like, well, I'll try to do, I guess 3 years ago now, I was like, well, I think it'd be cool to try to build one of those as a Bandai kit in 24 hours on May 4th. I'll just see if I can build one of those in 24 hours because it's a small thing. So I'm on my 4th one of those.
Ironically enough.
Right? So I'm on my May 4th build of one of those. And it's actually the last kit because I can't find them anymore. And I got 4 of them. But so I'm working on that one right now. I'm obviously not doing it in 24 hours this time because I have too much going on the 4th and there's no way I'm going to be able to pull that off. But because I've got a little bit more time, I've gone a little bit nuts and I decided to do this one with all the panels off of it. So right now I'm building up I know I'm going to show you stuff on the screen now. This is what I've got so far for the interior of it. And this is the exterior of it. It's got like those side panels where the round side panels where the guns basically sit in. It's as if those have been removed. And so they're just big open spaces now. And it's going to be turned into some kind of construction deal or something like that. So little tiny one, it's not marked as a scale on the box, but it's listed on Scale Mix as being 1/44 scale. So a little 1/44 scale Star Wars Walker is what's technically on my bench right now and what I'm working on. My May the 4th build will. And the next Northwest Scale Modelers meet is on May the 4th. So hopefully it'll be done by then. I have this vision in my mind of it like holding a shipping container over its head, walking through my stand or something. But I don't know if that'll happen, but at least these are my last 3, which you can see on Instagram is the last 3 I've got from the last 3 years.
Oh, nice. That's the Empire Strikes Back version with the longer legs.
It is, yeah. And I know that, and like I said, I ran out of these kits. So I've been thinking, well, maybe I should get one of the Bandai larger ones. But now that I've gotten so used to these ones, that one with the really short legs looks really weird to me. And so yeah. What I may end up doing, and what I've kind of had in the plan for a while now, is I build mostly 72nd scale, 72nd or 350. So I really want to do one of these in 72nd scale. And I have access to 3D printers. So, something might happen there.
Yeah, there you go. I know you can get the ATST, the Return of the Jedi version on a pretty good STL, and yeah, print those in 1/72nd scale. But the advantage of the 48 scale one is you can walk into a Hobby Lobby pretty much any time and find one of those. Where, like you said, the small version's not very easy to find.
I haven't been able to find one for a while now. The MPC one all day long, but there's a Bandai one that I'm afraid of the MPC one. I don't want to go down that road, but there's one of our club members brought one of the Bandai walkers to one of our meets, right? The Northwest Scale Modelers meet. And I was, as you always are when you look at a Bandai kit, I was super impressed. And like I said, I was always thinking, well, that one looks weird to me because I'm so used to this one. But I mean, seeing that one on the table was like, okay, never mind. Next time I see one of these, I'm getting it. But I haven't seen one since, and that was 4 or 5 months ago or so. And like I said, there's a Hobby Lobby here, and there's also email shop, Skyway Hobbies. I have not seen one, MPC one all day long, but I haven't seen one of the Bandai.
Yeah. Stay away from that one. But if you can't find one, give me a ring. I've got a couple of them. I'll hook you up with one.
Oh yeah, careful. I will take you up on that. There's also I have a dream in my head where Nilo Rodeman, I think the guy that designed the ATSD originally, he did a couple of sketches that were auctioned online a few years back, where it's got basically like a kind of a triangular nose on it. So that's also in the back of my mind as far as like use the legs off of a standard kit and build kind of that reimagined nose that he designed. So I've got a bunch of those. When those sketches went up for auction, I screen capped a bunch of them, and I've got those squirreled away.
Nice. Well, I mean, I'm really, really interested in your answer to this. So one thing we always ask our guests is, what's your magnum opus? You know, what's that great big project that one day you've been dreaming about, you've been planning, you know, no holds barred, as big or as grand as you can make it. What is that for Kit?
I knew this question was coming, and I can't narrow it down to just one. I mean, that Nilo ATST is one of them, right? One of the other big ones that's been in my mind for a long time, actually, since I was in college, building a few models in college, is my dad was on a Gearing class destroyer. This little guy right here. He was on the Henry W. Tucker on the gun line in Vietnam. He operated a Sea Chaparral, which was mounted on the helo deck of that destroyer. The only one that it was a test and it didn't work. So I don't think it ever happened again. But essentially it's a Sidewinder. It's a 4-place Sidewinder missile launcher, but it's sea-based, and it's been on a couple of other ships, but I think the test on the Gearing class was just a one-time thing. But he was the operator of that system. So I certainly would love to do at least helo deck with the door, the helo door, and one of those Sea Chaparrals mounted on it in 72nd scale. And to help that, I did just pick up and maybe that rear 5-inch 38 mount, and Tacom conveniently made the 72nd scale mount for that 5-inch 38. So I actually picked that up the other day. Really, the excuse was I need some scratch building stuff for the interior of my little ATST. So a 700 scale ship, which I don't want to build, but it's got a lot of junky junk to put inside my ATST interior. So I'm going to strip a bunch of stuff off that and maybe build that 5-inch 38 and maybe eventually make that into a deck with that Sea Chaparral on it. And then the other one that's always been right at the top of my mind was, if you're familiar with the Japanese battleships, was it Fuso? This guy right here, where it's basically a skyscraper on top of a battleship.
Yeah, those Pagoda Islands are wicked cool.
It's like a shantytown skyscraper built on top of a ship, right? I mean, there's nothing cooler. It's like that. Those trailers in the whatever that movie was, Ready Player One, you know, it's that like stack of it looks like a stack of trailers essentially. Love it, right? So I would absolutely, and I bought this book, which is like all these like amazing profiles of these two ships, right? Where it started off where it was just a three mast superstructure on it, but they just kept building like boxes onto it. So anyway, I would, again, absolutely love to do, I love 72nd as a scale. I would love to do just the superstructure of that ship. There's two, the Fuso and the other one, and one of them has a really awkward looking structure, and I want to do the really awkward looking one because
absolutely.
I love I don't know if it was you guys that were talking about the kind of constant scale trap. I'm definitely in that trap. I love sitting one thing next to each other and being like, I can't believe those are the same scale. I thought those were about the same size. It's like when I opened up this MiG-29 kit that John gave me, I was amazed at how small it was versus like an F-15. Like I've got an F-15 kit over here too. And that's fascinating to me, doing that comparison. And I mean, my focus on this, my joy, one of my joys of this hobby is doing that kind of, like I said, I like figuring out that packaging and the engineering and all of it. And so that's one of the things that really appeals to me about Wingnut Wings kits, is they have all that stuff inside. So you get to kind of internalize how this stuff's built. And that's one of the things that fascinates me about this superstructure project is it just looks like a mess of junk when you start looking at it. But I love the idea that by the end of that project, I'll understand what's going on there and what it all is, and kind of have a window into what it is, and also like what the designers were thinking and what they kind of did and how they accomplished this. That's a fascinating part of this hobby to me. And I mean, thinking about doing that, you know, that there was a cutaway model of a Age of Sail ship, right? That shows all the different decks in it of that. And this magnum opus build thing is kind of in that vein, as far as like just do a slice through the ship all the way up to superstructure. I think it would, in 72nd, I think it would be about 2 feet tall, but as long as it's a narrow enough slice, it won't take up a ton of desk room. So I think I can, it'll be lots of laser cutting, but I think I'll pull that off at some point.
Man, those sound real like great projects. And you've got some great modelers up there in the Seattle area, some great clubs to collaborate with and have them give you a hand if needed. But look forward to those. Well, Kit,
I can always lean on Bill Huffman, right?
Oh, yeah. Bill, he's an absolute genius, madman. We love Bill. Yeah, he's great, incredible. But well, hey, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you on social media, your Instagram account, and if you've got other accounts.
Yeah, it's basically just Instagram. I mean, that's kind of where I focus. I pull up on Facebook every once in a while because a lot of stuff's happening there, but I always forget about it. Again, I'm an artist. I'm a visual person, so Instagram's kind of right where it's at for me. But it's Kit's Kits. So Kit is my name. So that one's spelled correctly. It's KITS. And then underscore KITZ because Kits with 2 S's wasn't available. It was some person's cat, I think, right now. I don't know. But if you pull up on there and it's just pictures of a cat, that's not the right one. Put a Z at the end of it instead of an S, and that's me. So it's KITS underscore KITZ. That at Instagram is where most of my stuff is.
Awesome. I'd encourage people to check your Instagram out. I love that picture of your A4. You mounted it up on your modeling jig and you put it in front of like a white background, like a box art almost. It's great. Yeah. It's great. And then some of your reels where you're showing how you're making this stuff are great. And then also, as well.
I guess also I've been like I said, I connected with John Miller. So hopefully I'll be able to put some more articles up on Scale Model Paint Solutions website. So that and then Instagram. Yeah, love it.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, thank you so much for spending the time. This has been a lot of fun. I know we've been working on this for a while, so it was a great conversation. Look forward to, if not before, seeing you next February at the next Northwest Scale Modeling Show. Definitely. And hanging out with you. And in the meantime, look forward to seeing what comes off of your bench.
Love it. Yeah. Thanks. You guys too. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kit. This is great.
Thanks, Kit. Really appreciate it. That was a great interview with Kit there. I really had a great time. And I know JB and Scott, we could not stop talking about the guy. He has so many great stories. And his work, like we said, is really, really, really nice. That Wildcat sitting off the aircraft carrier with the spout, it's just great. I really love his work. If you want to rep the posse, you can check out our merch page. Many of you have already ordered Triple P coffee mugs, t-shirts, jumpers, and even the official PPP lounge trousers. I got to get a pair of those. You can order all our stylish, shall I say, fashionable merchandise at the website, plastic-posse-podcast.creator-spring.com /. Again, check it out. If you see us at a show, come up to us, wear your merch. We'll get a picture of you and we'll put you right on the page. All right?
I think we should make Eric yeehaw. What do you guys think?
We want to thank all of you for joining us on episode 69. Your support, along with your great sponsors, the Plastic Posse podcast, help bring Triple P to you every 2 weeks. Remember to send your feedback to this episode to the Plastic Posse podcast at gmail.com. And if you haven't joined the Plastic Posse group page on Facebook, head on over there to join the group. We have almost 4,000 members and the community is continuing to grow every day. See you all in 2 weeks. And well, Eric, it's time for you to say it.
Yeehaw!
Very nice.
That was wonderful.
Very nice. He's good at that, man.
Woohoo!
And this episode wouldn't be complete without mentioning our supporters that we know and love. So if you would like to support the Triple P and become a Posse Outrider, please go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/Plastic Posse Podcast and set up a recurring donation there. This really helps offset the cost of bringing the Triple P to you every 2 weeks. There are 3 different tiers, and the first is just starting at $1 a month. Let's recognize our amazing deputy marshals. These are the special folks that really contribute a lot every month and honestly over year and year, and they are constant supporters of us, and we love them so much. So let's start off with Drew Gardner, Scott Hall, Tim Holm, Frank Perrone, Dennis Tennant, the voice of Bob, Jeremy Diamond, Ryan Smith, Terry Wilkinson, Chris Lovewell, Andrew Kalis, Ethan Eidmill, Bruce the Model Noob, Steve Baker, Eric DeGleesh, Joe Porche, Graham Pearson, Patrick Brown, Steve Shaper, Jay Kidd, Paul Burdett, Brandon Gentry, Robert Klein, Mark Ewing, Ted Kalahara, John Bryan, Scale Model Hanger, Toadman, Model Doc, Doug Reed, Greg James, Les Ricala, B Colt 1911, John Everett, Josh Buck, Black Rifle Models Work, Thomas Bannock, Mark Bradley, Zach Pease, Joel Munson, Erik Brubaker, hey, I know that guy, Jeremy Moore, DB Scale Model Studio, Matt Johnson, Jeremy Elliott, Mike Talley, Previous Seat, Mediocre, Middle-Aged Modeler, Dan Knopfel, and the JC Osborne.
And a shout out to our excellent posse foreman, George G. Baker, Warhoff Models, Drew, Ross, Eric, Len, John, Cliff, Eric again, Mike, Benjamin, Craig, Papa Steve, Logan, Red Beach One Studios, MD Models, JV, Toby, Damian, Kieran, Cody, Papa Mike Charlie, Tim, Nukeman Mike, Greg, JAK Jack, Ash, Irish Pat, Paul, what's the deal with iBones Models? Mr. Grizz, Jackson, MAK Armor, Chris, Lee, Jamie, and of course, our good friend Jethro.
And of course, our Posse Outriders, including our very newest Outrider, Mr. Warren Dickinson. Thanks a lot, Warren. To wrap up, we're all asking you for a favor. If you would please consider posting a review of the Triple P on the podcast platform that you use to listen to the Posse or on Facebook. Each 5-star review that you post helps other modelers find the Plastic Posse. Also, again, if you haven't already, join our Plastic Posse group on Facebook. It's the place we hang out. It's where we interact. We post build pictures, answer each other's questions, and hang out with each other. So join in. It's a lot of fun over there, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
Good
Ba-dum-bum.